Radio Okitalk, Radio Okitalk, von Mensch zu Mensch.
Welcome to Team Rabbit Hole edition 122 with S.J. Anderson and Andreas Xirtus. You are most welcome.
Thank you. Guten Tag. I'm glad to be here. And Anderson, also good to be here with you.
Likewise, Guten Tag, Alice. Great to be here with you guys.
I'm glad you guys are speaking German. I know that SJ might be able to make a run for Berlin or Germany given the kind of situation. We'll get into this in a second, but I'm glad I caught it wasn't the 123rd episode. I had made the title Edsog pertinent to that, so I'm quickly editing that, Raphael, for the record. But everything else is probably golden in terms of the blip. But this is the 122nd episode, so that means it's the Hierophant card, which is I am the teacher of universal law. The Hierophant, or the High Priest, this is the exoteric kind of side of things. The High Priestess being the esoteric, rather. This is the outward manifestation of spiritual truth. Is the caretaker of spiritual knowledge, teaching others what you know, awakening to a greater understanding of the world, and paying attention to the details. Very apropos, given what we were talking about kind of in the green room, which I'm sure we'll talk about more of. But Raphael, what would the Galactic Heritage card be?
So 122 is 5. In this case, it's 14. Lyra, Seeds of Polarity, as timeline. As humanoid races began growing throughout the Lyran system, the yin-yang principle of duality became more pronounced. At first, the polarities remained balanced. But because our cosmic journey is about growth and the integration of polarity, those polarities had to become more pronounced before they could be healed. Take a look at how polarity plays out in your life today. Do not fear it as you did in ancient times. Learn how to stay balanced even amid the temptation to choose one pole over the other. Wisdom comes from embracing both rather than choosing one side over another.
Well, that's kind of where it's at. Did that resonate with either of y'all?
Every little bit. I was like, just on half of it, I was thinking, wow, it's interesting because you said 122. Where I'm at, it's 122 exactly, or it was when the show started. So I didn't even know you meant the episode number. But of course it is, because thinking about it, that makes sense. But the idea of humanoid form and how we're reflective of each other, I mean, that shows up repeatedly in, synchromysticism. We find the reflection. So that was my first thought.
I love how it's actually the time for you, an hour ahead or behind you, I guess. And if it doesn't hit anything, that's cool. But we do throw up these kind of landmines to maybe hit synchronistic pockets. I don't know if just
Tripwire.
Yeah, tripwiring the Tao. SJ, anything resonate with you?
Well, I think about the Hierophant and the just Taurus signifying Chris and kind of the feminine priestess. You know, it's almost like the you think about the high priestess, right, in the tarot as being like maybe the feminine priest, but there's it's similar to the Jungian model of kind of the soul. You actually have the seed of the feminine in this masculine hierophant. And the Taurus is that femininity, that deep lunar and Venusian femininity that I think can be, you know, instructive when we think about doing rituals. You know, so that's what jumped out at me. I always want to be in touch with my inner femininity, man.
You gotta. I just also got a copy of Salvador Dali's tarot deck. And
Nice.
It really is. I can admit that. But
I've got it on my computer. I don't have a hard copy, but I've seen it. It's very it's artistic.
It's artistic, but there's also some really essential symbology, and I think that the set is on the Hierophant card, but I need to go back and look through it to check. But there's some interesting little stuff going on with the Hierophant. And then the idea of the Grand Vizier, you think of Aladdin and that kind of pseudo-feminine, you know, in a weird way, Jafar is a bit feminine because he's following Jungian archetypical femininity by being receptive and, you know, even to a fault, like you could say, like to the point where it's like femininity today has been considered, just like masculinity, a product of society that we expect of you. I mean, to be an object, whether you're a strong man, a pretty girl, whatever, these are just socially put onto you. But the real true ideas of femininity and masculinity have very little to do with what society wants of you. And those are things that are inside of every person.
I don't remember exactly what I read because I'm a double Gemini and that's just what happens. But what it was talking about was kind of like revealing truth and seeing the world kind of as it is or whatever. And what we were talking about in the green room, I had said that Michael Jackson had been like kind of coming up a lot for me.
His soul.
Right. And you guys were saying quite a bit that I haven't ever heard. I don't know if you want to rehash some of that, but
So we'll go into all of that. I'll just read the
Okay,
intro
cool,
track.
cool.
As SJ is living on the Black Sea, Xirtus is holding it down in Minnesota. It is post-eclipse season, and the times are a stranger. Join the team as we shoot the shit with an amazing astrologer and synchromystic and a, Jim's put it there, woke YouTuber. But that's a heavy understatement, but that's good.
well,
It looks like Victor is in here too. Did you get in here yet?
Raphael is on the helm at that point. He's a Dane.
I see Subs Harvester and not in Grunis Sofa, so you can grab him if you want.
It's so interesting what kind of information I get relayed and what I don't, but here you are, Victor.
Hey guys,
Welcome.
can you hear me?
We can. How's
Loud
it going,
and
sir?
clear and crisp.
Hey guys, I was under the impression it was only going to
You were
be.
correct. You were correct.
yeah.
Don't worry.
Okay, well,
We'll
it's
blame
all good,
Mercury
it's all
retrograde,
good.
which is no longer happening, but I think when we made all these plans, that was occurring more. So, yeah, not your bad, our bad.
We're
I
always
would
trying
even
to
say-
surprise a Dane. It's just
No problem, guys. It actually fits, so no problem at all.
How many dikes can you plug with your thumb and it actually fits? Here we go.
those
So,
are the Dutchmen.
dude, well, fuck. Shows you how even my fucking history, however false it might be, is convoluted.
California boys and Dutchmen only, but it makes sense. I like where you're going with that. But wait, really quickly to catch up, Subs. We just talked a bit about the Hierophant card and the High Priestess and femininity, and then we were getting close to talking about Michael Jackson. But there's more. I know
have
you've got a
some
lot on that
things.
too.
Are we? Sorry to be a bit naive. Are we live right now?
We are.
We are.
Interesting.
We are the
Okay,
world.
hello out there. Okay, so you brought up the Hierophant card. So
That's the
you-
episode.
Well, amazing, because I know something very specialized about that card.
Spill your beans.
Do go on.
I'm letting it simmer a bit. No, okay. So you see that he has a very special hand position, right? He has his Jupiter and his Saturn finger together, so he's pointing to the conjunction. And in his
What the
other
heck?
hand, he is holding a staff or a cross, right?
In the right of way, yes.
Which deck? In the Rider Waite deck?
And well, yeah, that's a good question. I would think in the common Levi deck.
I'm looking at the Rider-Waite. I just pulled it up. He's got the first two fingers and the thumb united with
Yeah.
the ring finger and the pinky finger down. Is that the one you're talking about? And then the staff has 1, 2, 3
Indeed.
kind of prongs. Okay, this looks like the
Yeah,
Rider-Waite
that's
Smith deck.
exactly
Okay, cool.
one. Yeah.
I'm trying to
It's kind of
remember
like
what the name.
firebender hand positions.
There's a name for this too. I can't remember what it is. Do you remember
It's
what
the
called?
sign of benediction.
Benediction.
Yeah. That's an interesting connection as well. But for the staff, which is really what I wanted to talk about, I have found a lot of different art pieces showing that this staff was actually not a symbolical device or whatever. It was actually an astronomical device, wherewith you would predict movements of the stars. So it fits, his hand gesture fits the device in his other hand, because the temporal power that the Hierophant holds and the spiritual power that he holds is due to his knowledge of the heavens and the ability to predict events and trends. And how does he do that? He uses his staff to actually find out when the conjunction is going to occur, and that is gaining astronomical knowledge. And so it's a telescope. It's an ancient telescope.
It's funny that you mentioned that because there's a bunch of talk of the Vatican being the main investor in these telescopes, these advanced telescopes all over the world.
The Lucifer Project.
Yeah,
the Lucifer Project.
Yeah.
There's this
They'll-
idea
they
too.
arrive
Let me
first.
just to say, that the church is the intermediary between the human, hoi polloi, the unwashed, and the divine. It's this bridge. So I really like that idea. Let's
Operator,
see.
please connect me to the Vatican.
Yeah, they have the Lucifer telescope, a very large lens. I thought for a while it was the largest, but I came to realize there are a few much larger ones out there. But it is impressive with the specs it has. I think that is really
It was the
specs-
largest one like 20 years ago. I
Yeah.
think that they've built larger ones in the mid 2010s.
Yeah,
Canary
but still,
Islands
its
has one.
specs is really impressive still, as far as I hear. I'm not an expert in these
And
matters.
any of these other larger telescopes have Jesuits running them, so don't worry
Yeah.
about that.
But another interesting connection with the Lucifer telescope is where it is, the land it sits on. It sits on Native American Holy Land. So that ties in with the Q Celtic story that Ben Analog and I have been, telling our listeners
Some
in our
fascinating stuff
radio show.
about the Gaels, the Gaelic people, and the Celts, but more deeply, what we don't really kind of mention about the Celts is that their nomadicism brought them as far east as Syria through the Cordoba Caliphate into what is modern day Iran, and up, eventually into England and in Ireland, but that they were aboriginal to England and Ireland, but probably came more from somewhere in Central Europe, perhaps where Austria is today, which
But
explains a
Andreas,
lot of redheads.
Andreas, you're really you're not telling the really amazing story, right? The truly mind-blowing story about this.
That's your job. You go right in.
No. Well, it's both of our jobs, but the truly revelatory, mind-blowing thing that has, let's say, contemporary value is that apparently these Celts and Tatars are directly connected to the military operation that is going on right now called QAnon.
Yeah, that's definitely something that people should notice, is that there's actually not just this one person who's anonymous, but that there's a group of people in history who have been displaced that are kind of in a century-long agenda to reclaim their place, because along the royal family lines, technically those who are in charge right now have less claim to the throne of I forget now, is it Lionhearted? Is it Richard the Lionhearted, or is it the King Normand of Normandy? But they, one way or
It's
another,
still debated. Yeah.
one way or another, they think that they should be a more closely descendant line than the Saxon-Coburg-von Goth family. And this has thrown Europe and the world into chaos, as King John III will soon replace the Queen of England.
Yeah, and there's also another guy from New Zealand, John Wanoa, who has by contract he's an heir to a contract between the New Zealand tribes and one of the British kings 200 years ago, I think.
Guys,
And that was
quickly, I just ask you, Supper, because you sort of lost me. King John III, can you just stop there and tell us who that is?
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
because
good.
I
have
haven't
no
been
idea.
paying attention to the news.
That's it's fun to put. That's the thing. Good, because if you were, you'd have missed this. But what's going on is that they've taken the seal off of Buckingham Palace. Was the first sign people got, minus what people were talking about on the internet. I mean, the people were talking about the fact the Queen's old for a while, and who will be the new king? Because obviously there will have to be in the next year or 5, a new royal. The thing that's strange is it might not be her son or her grandchildren. And when they took the seal off of the door and didn't replace it, they also removed the guards with their red coats and their afro hats, and they replaced them with people that look like Civil War soldiers in blue with flat hats.
And also, don't you forget, when Trump visited Queen Elizabeth 2 years ago, I think it was, he did something quite unusual. He stepped in front of her. And
Right.
and that was
This was the
noted
beginning.
by a lot of people. That symbolical gesture was said by all of the community to be that Trump is taking control over Britain in some fashion or another. And that was quite apparent. Very
It was
interesting.
definitely
I'd say.
no accident. The idea, people act like these things are accidents. It's how is
Yeah.
that? It's not physically possible.
He also stood in the he was on the podium right after he stepped in front of her and led her symbolically up that road. He stood in the middle underneath. There was like this podium, and it had like a triangle shape. And the Queen normally stands in the center. And when Trump was there, he stood in the center, and she was to his left, I think. So that was symbolical again of him being in charge.
This also gets into why
yeah.
Trump dyes his hair red, right? Because at this point he doesn't have natural red hair, and he never really did. You look at blonde hair in the earlier pictures in the 70s.
I would think it also ties in with the red-haired Q Celts.
That's what I mean. His mother, Trump's mother, was
McLeod.
She was royalty, but raised in Hooverville, kind of like one of the most poor people in New York at the time, and she became the wife of a successful contractor. But at the same time, before that, her family several centuries earlier would have been Celtic royalty. And
Indeed.
so
Like
Trump's got
JFK.
Exactly
like
Fitzgerald.
JFK. And even more so, Andreas, it gets even crazier, because going through the McLeod line back to their first, let's say, significant member of the family line, it was literally a Tartarian king, and one of the more prominent one, it was Rurik of the Russia, the Rus Tatars, who ruled Kiev and Moscow, that area of Muscovite Tartary. And he was basically the king, or the first king of the line, who sat on Tartary's throne for 700 years, until the Romanovs in the 1600s, more or less, took over the throne. So it's very significant that you can trace Trump's lineage back to one of the more prominent Khans of Tartary.
Especially considering that they respect, like, for instance, you look at the king of Ethiopia in the 20th century, Haile Selassie, the respect he was given as a royal related to Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, I believe, superseded the royalty of the royal family of England. And so they had to treat him with a certain sort of etiquette, because otherwise other people wouldn't treat them with their royal lineages, so this is why they respect certain kingdoms in different parts of Africa or in Indonesia or in the Polynesian Islands. Because
there are
them respect.
Photos of a young Elizabeth with her husband, the one who we dare not name, or perhaps an inside joke, but still. They bowed in front of the Ethiopian kings in the early I'm getting the dates wrong, but a long time ago. I have the photo somewhere. And I just wonder what people knew about Ethiopia back then. What was the narrative?
What's funny is it gets back into Michael Jackson, right? Because Michael Jackson was not supposed to be born into show business as a slave, But if you were to look back into his family lineage, you can find.
And he's an RH negative for the record.
What?
He's a negative?
Yeah, my fiance's RH negative, and she was like, "Oh, he's an RH negative."
Oh, RH negative, right? Well, so he comes from West African.
Because that was mentioned, we just have to mention this, right? In the current QAnon community, like one of the very big Twitter profiles is saying that they are doing excessive testing right now because they are looking for the RH negative people, because they know that ascension is ahead, or integration, whatever way you want to look at it. But some big change, like as in a major vibrational shift, is about
A changing
to
of the
occur.
guard, so to speak. Get it?
Yeah. And they want to bypass the morality, like the sin. So they're looking for the DNA of and the blood signature, the source code, so to speak, to easy ascension. And that is why they're looking for the RH next. We are the so they are the easy ascensions, or so to speak. So they're looking for those people who already have that encoded in them, and so they can replicate that, put them into themselves, and then they believe they have bypassed all the
We hacked the system, guys.
Just briefly, as we're on this topic,
Graham,
just a second. Just to put it into context. So number one, how much are you familiar with the idea that RH negative actually has kind of copper-based blood or something along those lines? How do you relate it to the Basques and the red hair and potentially the giants or royal lineages? Because the impression I had gotten so far was rather that, also potentially RH negative is in higher concentration among so-called royal bloodlines. But what's your view on that?
So wait, hold on really quickly, just before we get into too deep on that. Like the Akan people in Africa with West Ghana are both storytellers, were the Song of the South and Brer Rabbit, and the giant spider cult that the Bohemian Grove and the Jesuits follow, right, from South Park. All of that comes from the Akan people. And the Akan people, they have a lineage where they make an instrument and then they teach their history through music, and it's been going on for thousands of years. Well, Michael Jackson comes from the Akan people. So it becomes very interesting that he was a royal bloodline, likely from the Akan people with copper blood.
That makes so much more sense now, because when Diana met him, she acted very strangely.
Well, like all the royals took him very seriously.
Yeah, exactly. Also, even Philip. And it reminds me of how they bowed in submission to, or at least in very respectfully towards the Ethiopian royal line in the early days.
I want to just jump in here and say that royal line, the Graham Hancock's, I believe it's his first book that was non-mainstream, is all about how the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia with that royal
they're
family.
guarded. It's guarded in that little church there. Yeah.
When you start looking into 20th century communist African movements and what happened to Ethiopia after Italian fascism, where Italy itself had a very strong tie through the Jesuits to liberation theology. This is why they did that, because in places where they could remove the royal families, it was a lot easier to take things like their obelisk. The Ethiopian obelisk was taken, and then it's been brought back, but it's been, I don't know how to say, circumcised, right? I mean, they broke it into pieces, and it doesn't ever go back together properly now. But Ethiopia is probably where a lot of either Ethiopia or Eritrea, because the rivers that run from Egypt go down into the Congo, and thousands of years ago it was Lake Chad and several other lakes in the north. The Lake Congo was south, but you could get across Africa. Like the Sahara is sand covering lakes. Right now they're bigger lakes, paleo lakes, than there are in the Great Lakes region of the United States. The biggest lakes in the world are underneath the desert of the Sahara. So people don't really get this idea of what it was like to be able to move back and forth so quickly across Africa without it being a desert.
Well, yeah.
Just quickly, the idea of the Giza Plateau and Robert Schoch and all of those guys talking about the age of Taurus. To go back to the Hierophant card, or even the ages before that, some of the age of Gemini, or actually they trace it back to the age of Leo, but that there was a verdant, abundant green space all over Africa, and so we've had changes in the landscape.
So it was green because of those lakes. So it was hugely blue. You have to imagine that some of these lakes were larger than Nevada, larger than Texas. There's some of
Yeah.
these lakes were so large that the entire community circled around they had buildings and temples and cities on all sides of it, like Burning Man, and then they'd have to take boats across the center of this giant lake to get to each other, and then the rivers would flow from one to the other fast. So
they probably also had artificial islands out in these lakes.
well, we know that
crops.
the Mexicans did, right? The Aztecs did. So the idea that that they were connected has become more and more conclusive. That we look at Ecuador and we see Egyptian iconography that's nearly identical. And so the idea is that there were in Lake Titicaca in Bolivia and in Mexico City, which is originally a lake, settlements of these same peoples is both fascinating but also becoming closer and closer to conclusive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's stark at this moment, like to see all these connections, how they're replicated across continents, and we're just I guess we're on the cusp of this going to the mainstream, that once was a giant civilized culture that was connected worldwide. I think most people are ready for that. Like even after all the History Channel programming and Ancient Aliens stuff, right? I think they're ready for it, like on a very large scale. So
also, Mr. Anderson, you said something interesting about the different periods when these pyramids and these buildings are aligned to. I believe some of them have been obviously rebuilt after the 1800s because of wars, and especially after Napoleon, things have been manipulated. But looking at the really old ones that are lost in the middle of the desert, it's pretty hard to imagine that in the middle of nowhere somebody went in and just built some fake pyramids 100 years ago. So it's likely that they really are aligned.
You even
to
have
Gemini and
such
Taurus.
stories in the U.S. There is a pyramid in one of the states. It was built, they say, as a monument to someone who was involved in making some of the railroads. I think during the early Civil War.
What a great story.
Yeah. So they said they built this massive stone pyramid in the middle of nowhere as a monument to those people. Just
and
amazing.
by hand, which is crazy. If you look at the thing, it's like a bunch of hand lifted stones that are like tonnage. It's tonnage of weight. It's impossible.
So does any of you just briefly want to type together the whole RH negative story in regards to the question as to why they would not have it like inbuilt into their royal lineage already?
Well, looking at blue blood and crabs, right? So they use copper. Blue blood crabs are very valuable. I used to live in Connecticut, and in this area, they have these crabs with blue skin, blue shells, and their blood's blue because it doesn't rely on the iron to hold the oxygen. See, the way blood cells work is there's a metal that's being used to create a nanoparticulate that actually can connect to a gas, and then the gas is being transferred within a blood cell. But it doesn't have to be iron based. In fact, if we were to use titanium and make new nano blood, you could die and call the hospital the next day and be like, hey, my heart stopped. And then they'd be like, okay, well, when can we schedule you in? Can you come in on Tuesday? You're like, no, I'm working Tuesday. Well, I'll come in on Friday. Okay. And then you show up and then they just cycle your blood and they give you a new fan like Dick Cheney's torpedo heart. But with copper blood, it's similar. Like you can hold your breath a lot longer with copper than iron. Not as long as with titanium, but that's why
But do you know, is this really tied to the RH positive or negative? Like in human species, do they actually have copper-based blood? Do you know?
It's not fully copper based, but the rhesus negative blood has evidence that there is
it's like higher content of copper.
Yeah, and the thing is, it works well with ionic copper and colloidal coppers. And you have to imagine that royals would have been like the queen bee, so epigenetics would have affected them. If you were giving someone ormus, gold particulates and copper particulates, it's going to affect the way their body works. And let's put it another way: does copper hold oxygen? Yes, it does. So it would be valuable. And if you were, generationally used to it, then you might not be, copper poisoning is real. So if you're able to handle copper poisoning is a better question, because if you can eat a lot of copper, and looking at these regions where there's always volcanoes, there's always mining, there's always minerals. I mean, the likelihood of their water being, I remember when I was in in Paraguay, the water was just constantly like doing tests. full of crazy kinds of rare, valuable metals, noble metals. And so it would be in your system no matter what. And yeah, I felt healthy. I felt more than healthy. So
Nice.
Yeah, metal seems to really scare people. They have scared people about metals, right?
Oh, yeah,
And
totally.
yeah. So, but it is a very complicated subject. Like as a not a chemistry major, but at least half a major in biotech, I know that a compound can be healthy and unhealthy depending on charge, and even like in co-compounds. So it's complicated, and
that's
it's not always. Yeah,
that's absolutely
Yes, and
true. The
depending on the form
toxicity,
it comes in,
right?
like whether
If you have
it's
large,
bioavailable and so on and so forth.
indeed. Yeah. So all
yeah, you
these
want
things
monoatomic.
just are. It's a big labyrinth of getting to that final conclusion of whether good or bad, and takes
But
a lot
looking-
of
My
specialized
looking at
knowledge.
current
Michael-
favorite I'd like to share just briefly is Shilajit or Mumio, from the Russian mountains, which even to this day, I looked it up. They said they don't know what it really is and how it really gets produced, but it is the thing as a panacea and for longevity and disease prevention in Ayurveda, which is
Mhm.
quite an ancient lore, right? And it contains, there's like some nice, you can get it really cheaply on eBay, really good quality. And there's some, nicer made websites or whatever as well. And they show you it has like carbon 60, it has gold, all kinds of amazing minerals and fulvic acid and so on and so forth. So there's certainly
Interesting.
something behind that.
Another side of it to look at, like as a question to see if it brings an answer, is like, were monoatomic gold and copper available to the Akan people, the royals in Africa? And the answer is a resounding yes. If you start Wikipedia on Akan, AKAN, you can start to see.
Like the rapper?
Yeah, totally. The name comes from an African tribe near Ghana that had a gold boom, and with the gold boom, they became exorbitantly wealthy, and we're connected all over the world. In fact, this is why Vikings have Eritrean and Ethiopian style boats. The boats come from Africa, just like the lions on the shields. There are no lions in Denmark unless they're in the zoo, but the Africans brought them. And when you start to see copper, brass, the copper period predates the brass period, which is fascinating. If you know about copper metallurgy, it doesn't really make sense, because to understand how to do copper, you need far more power, like electrolysis, essentially. So we don't know how they were using copper before they were using brass, but it's an open question. But the gold fields of Bambouk and Bur and Volta, the Volta rivers, were all eventually conquered in the 13th to 15th century. And they removed the African matriarchies by giving guns and weapons to weaker tribes and to slave traders in Africa, so that
They started
could kill
shitty gang
off.
warfare, basically.
Yeah, it's like when the CIA gives guns to one gang instead of another, and then it takes out the gang they have more problems with. So then they sold all their people, especially these royals who survived, which is fascinating, by the way, that they survived this, bringing people over, like the strongest people. So that makes you wonder about the royal lines and what they did to keep so healthy that they could survive this. But if it was metals that made it possible, once they got to Americas and started to reproduce, they still, seemingly, even though they were raped and holocausted and had their culture stolen from them, they continue to do this thing of carrying on musical history and lineage.
Motown, baby.
Motown, but even again with Brer Rabbit and Song of the South, from the very beginning all the way to the end, it's still happening. What's happened now, of course, is it's been co-opted like everything else, and so music tells you to just try to barely function and get really wasted. But that was clearly not what was going on even in the 1800s, 1900s, 20th century. It took a long time for them to conquer
Just
the
to
Akan
briefly
tradition.
provide a practical example about the minerals and how important they are. There's a great website, apparently, 91essentialnutrients.com. There's a guy called Dr. Joel Wallach, and he wrote like a small pamphlet called Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And on the one hand, he's showing how the average lifespan of officially, school medicine doctors is lower than the average population. That was my issue when I started researching nutrition like 10 years ago. I was like, whom to trust? Everyone says something different, until I found like some 90-year-old naturopath who was kind of vegetarian or something and talked about fasting. I was okay, at least you're old enough that I could listen to you. But anyhow, with Dr. Joel Wallach, he's talking about his 91 nutrients and the minerals and how they are actually, and let's say, one very important core foundation of health that has been greatly overlooked in, modern so-called medicine.
Reminds me of that meme I've seen recently. I think maybe even the Denmark health minister or whatever's on this meme, but it's like the chick from LA or the US one. Basically, if you look at the quote health of, and I'm not trying to hate on people, but like the people that are in charge of health programs in various countries are
It's in
not particularly
Belgium,
healthy looking.
Belgium, and one of the states over there, and yeah, I think two of the
California, I think.
states. Yeah,
I remember being in
it's the Belgian.
California, and the doctors told me that I wasn't allowed to eat any more colloidal copper, and that was the last time I went to a hospital, because that's just, I mean, like, they don't know anything anymore except for what they're given hotel resort trips by pharmacies to know. And it's really
someone
sad.
mentioned it's a military system, no? Maybe even was in one of your videos.
I definitely
but-
think that the original ideas of medic is where we get social medicine. I mean, most of social services come from original, so like any new idea.
yeah.
comes from an
There's
old
a
idea.
war
Prisons?
all over it. It comes from the Knights Hospitallers. It's why we call them
Our favorite.
hospitals. And what they did back then, as through the Jesuit or the proto-Jesuit sentiment through the Vatican or Rome, was that they slow killed people from these hospitals. It was depopulation.
It
And
was also useful
yeah.
for studying people. Like you hear about World War II. God, I mean, like, look at these stork ladies in the Dark Ages. Like, they were really studying how they could kill people and how people die, and what happens if
Yeah,
you bring
they
one
studied
cut
trauma.
of one disease to another person and give them the disease. Like, how can you transfer a virus? They had to actually try to give it to people to figure out how to do that. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
All the words now are lockdown, that's military and prison. There was roving squads to enforce the lockdowns. I was just hearing a thing about the California using military terminology.
Eugenics, California and eugenics. There's a great book, because the Nazis, when they were asked, why did you do all these horrible things? They're like, well, we were just trying to keep up with the US. We had this book, on California and how they were sterilizing Basques and deaf people from, Alexander Graham Bell and Kellogg were sterilizing deaf and poor people with radiated Kellogg's cornflakes. So,
yeah,
I mean,
in Denmark, they took unruly girls and isolated them on an island, and also whores and freaks, people they didn't want to look at. They just put them there on that island and basically
Socially
imprisoned
distance
them.
them.
Yeah.
and that's how Christiania was born. Just kidding.
No, that's actually it's a funny story. It's something, like
Also military.
before I awoke to anything, like whenever I would, we have these large bridges in Denmark that connects the mainland that is connected to Germany to the main island where Copenhagen is. There's the big
Malmö.
belt and the little belt bridge that connects it all. And
To Hamburg.
there's a connecting island on the big belt bridge because it's like two bridges that's connected by a little island in the middle of the main island and the middle island. And that little island in the middle there is called Language Island, if I were to translate it, but Sprogø, Language Island. And it has a very curious lighthouse on it, and there's nothing on it besides that. And it's all hush-hush, you cannot get in there. What I always get intuitively, because that was the place where they locked down these girls, right? So what I have always felt in my bones when I drive past it is that beneath that mound and that hill where the lighthouse is, there is some sort of base, and it's connected with some sort of submarine. I always try to envision how it would look like, but something nefarious is going on there is always what I'm getting.
I saw
I have
some
no
submarines
grounds
in the
to
lake
believe
here.
that, other than like these girls were taken there back when, post World War II, and we all know what the intelligence agency were doing post World War II. Like, it wasn't only the US, it wasn't
Joy
only Germany,
divisions.
right? It wasn't only mind control wasn't only studied by German scientists in the US post World War, was probably everywhere, right? So yeah.
Oh, so the
I'm getting
soundbite.
that.
the soundbite to take away from the last thing is that no new ideas come out of the military-industrial complex. That's corporatism and consumerism and neoliberalism. What comes out is the same ideas, which are military and prison, right? Military and prison is where everything comes from. Social services come from prison. Refugee camps come from prison. Apartment buildings come from Section 8. It all comes from how they run prisons.
It's a legal benefit to go to prison.
It helps you, right?
It's a legal it's a benefit in our social contract. That's how it's viewed.
And then the medic is where we get most of our medical. If you know, and this is why the World Health Organization says to be healthy, you have to be working. Literally, part of the idea of not being insane is that you have a job, according to the World Health Organization. So
This is awesome.
It's funny. I just I don't know if you guys ever watched Avatar: The Last Airbender animated series.
I love that show.
Oh, dude, I just finished it last night because I saw the M. Night Shyamalan
Air,
movie.
wind, water. Yeah.
Like the M. Night Shyamalan
who
movie
cannot
is
love
shit. Well, the film is terrible. No one watched the film straight up and down. Though it encompasses the first season and it's
that
on
little
Netflix.
Blind girl with the caves.
Oh, she's dope. Toth.
Dope. Toth is great.
Yeah, she's real hip. They're all hip. It's a great show. And it's like Game of Thrones for kids. It's insane, but it kind of gets me thinking a little about what we're talking about in terms of historical resets. I mean, it's getting into that to a degree where it's just like conditions are not what you think.
It's all about the kingdoms, and I mean, sorry, now I have to mention also the mescaline episode. What the heck? When Saki eats the mescaline water, that was a trip for 8-year-olds. What? But yeah, the idea of the different kingdoms that had kind of specialized, and then they collapse after a century. I mean, and there's always somebody who has sort of honed in on the powers. That's kind of cool, the Avatar.
And the whole thing being based around an astronomical event, right? Where it's like, okay, when the comet comes by, the Fire Nation gets more power, and if there's an eclipse, they're kind of eclipsed, and the moon, the Water Tribe can do more. It's just fascinating. So I don't know how that ties into what we're talking about, but I felt like it was worth mentioning.
I really think that Avatar is a lot like Avatar Terria, you know, because you've got this Ave, Holy Tartaria, Avatar. It's the Holy Tar, and so the Holy Father also, because Tartar isn't even the word that the Tartarians used. We use that more now.
The Holy Father being the Hierophant.
They called it, yeah. Hey, that was good. But they
called their own language. They called their own country Kitai.
Yeah,
and also like with a Q originally, which is something that is what Ben and I have been talking about, how this Q letter and sound has been revised and beaten out of old names and places, and how this letter Q has been, bastardized into something else that tried to change the meaning of it, but the meaning is still retained with the Saturnian symbolism that goes with Q, even in Hebrew and Old Phoenician. It's all Saturn. So we're coming into Aquarius. That's Saturn again. Q is rising in this on the cusp of Pisces to Aquarius. It's all heavenly ordained. Like even when POTUS was inaugurated in 2017, there was a heavenly sign, like a biblical sign, showing the coming of the Son of Man. I'll get you that, Jim. I can probably send you that over Facebook, so you can see the imagery. Yeah, so it's literally as Q says in many of his posts. It is biblical. It is prophecy. Like when Trump was inaugurated, there was a spectacular once in 7,000 years heavenly event going on, and nobody talked about it really. It's amazing because Orange Man bad, right?
Blackout Tuesday.
The Gaelic man. But also, this is something I found recently, was mea culpa. So mea culpa, one of the symbols used was the copa, and the copa is the phi kind of Q from ancient Greece and from the phonetics. So it's very interesting because mea culpa means through my fault, and has a lot to do with through your actions there are consequences. Mea culpa.
Oh, that's very Saturnian. Like it sounds like something the Rosicrucians would have adopted. And
Indeed.
That is also something equally astonishing in all of this Q history, because that is what I'm getting to. Like this is probably what we should call it, Q history. But to many people it sounds insane to relate QAnon to anything historical. But as Ben and I have worded it on our show, is like, how can we not, when everything we get from this movement we can relate back to it, like, and easily.
taking something as anonymous at face value is a little, especially when something is so interconnected
The
to everyone's
idea
politics.
of anonymity seems to have appeared either in Rome or in Tartary, and in one of the most spectacular revelatory manners I have ever. I pride myself for knowing a lot of ideas. I've studied philosophy. I know idea history very well, but a new idea came from this when I studied Tartary. So imagine you have this entire empire, right? That Tartary is said to have been. And you have a form of rulership. You have one Khan who is ruling a lot of other Khans, right? And it's only going through fidelity and loyalty and through the submission to natural law. So this Khan, some sources point to, was not known. Like Prester John was some sort of anonymous Khan to the people. They didn't see him. They didn't hear from him. They probably didn't know exactly who he was.
It's like Hidden Boss, that TV show where you might be serving pizza with your manager.
Yeah.
And that was an idea that was infused into that Tartary literature. Even if it's not true, I found the idea fascinating. So I couldn't find any historical references to anonymity in such a manner before that. And it also seems like there was like a tradition in poetry, early poetry, of there were a lot of anonymous poets, and they get
Nemo. Nemo means no person.
no name, yeah, and
it
a lot
goes
of poems were signed with anon, and people made jokes about that there was like this single poet philosopher calling himself anon for anonymous, but
It seems like
it's just funny.
Pre-Euclidean, somewhere along the lines from Pythagoras. It seems they started this concept of having an anonymous forum, because so a forum is a marketplace for property, and it can be an intellectual property that you're exchanging, and it can be exchanged for free, or it can be exchanged for positive reciprocity, where we both discuss. This is a forum right now. We're exchanging intellectual property, and we're even capitalizing on that, and that's positive reciprocity. That if we were to have someone here who didn't feel like they would be respected for themselves because they were not a nobleman, they could then execute their ideas in an anonymous fashion, and vice versa. Someone who's a nobleman wouldn't get in trouble for suggesting something that was true. So a forum was the original idea, and it was a dialogue and discourse that went on in a large format where a lot of people were looking at it, but nobody knew exactly who it was, and there wasn't a deciding vote. This is the problem. Anonymity has become useful for voting for people, and this is the opposite idea, because originally you would have a forum to discuss ideas, and then we would cafeteria pick each other's ideas out to come up with the correct solution, and no one would ever say they were wrong, because by that point we'd have all agreed on what, we'd all share in what is actually right from all of the arguments. So it was never to be a fight. And so democracy said basically that the individual has to consent by a lottery to the majorative vote. And this is a dangerous idea, because this is how Socrates was murdered. They said, they put it to a vote, and Socrates said, "Don't kill me," and everyone else said, "Yeah, no, kill him." So so self.
Maybe even Ned Stark. I don't remember Game of Thrones exactly, but it's like he was a good guy. He lost his head about it.
And then there's that queen. Shame. I like that scene.
Just throw on your mask, man. You're anonymous, and go out and start killing.
What I'm just thinking about here is, doesn't this also kind of get into, because on the one hand I think it's good, if possible, if someone puts out an idea, if it kind of can be traced, not to prosecute in my view, of course, but more like to get more background and conversation going. However, it also seems to me like anonymity and like copyright, let's say, are also obviously at odds. I'm wondering how this would play into more recent times, or that definitely seems like it can serve multiple purposes.
Anonymous can really only, without having someone to represent them and say, okay, well, this person, this church this corporation is going to represent my, anonymously. Then what you end up having is somebody takes control of an idea, and so you don't do that unless you do copylefting. Copylefting is where you say this idea is free, and I'm making sure nobody can ever have it privately. It's been
I've never
donated to
heard
the
of
common.
that.
Yeah.
Copylefting is what Linux is, and GNU and a lot of things. Benjamin Franklin.
Yes, it's where it's at.
So like
copylefted
open
the,
sourcing.
yeah, but beyond it, because open sourcing is like, here, you can see the code, you can buy a copy of the code. No, free, like liberty, not like beer, like straight
royalty
up.
free.
Yeah,
Royalty free.
Like Benjamin Franklin published books on and designs for lightning rods and for sorts of things. The Benjamin Franklin stove, and did not patent them because he wanted certain things to introduce to the Industrial Revolution so that they
That
could
was
start,
the Rosicrucian hand that controlled the level of, let's say, the level of potentiality civilization would have in a certain window of time. You can be sure that he had much more potent technologies at hand to deliver to the public, but you can also be assured that he knew that it had to be given in small doses, and they're still doing that.
Well, it's
And my
ironic that-
contention is
It's in the
that the
language.
Rosicrucian order is behind Trump, and it's all Rosicrucianism that is delivering this great awakening, and that is the great work, and it is the same secret destiny of America that Manly P. Hall wrote books about.
Hopefully, it's more of
Really,
a
the
proposition
public
than contention.
Just throwing in the idea of the
It
royalty
is.
free.
It's more like it's not a proposition.
Oh,
It's
wait,
not
what?
an
Sorry.
intention for them. It's like it's a promise by the heavens. So either someone is going to do the job, or someone is not going to do the job, and they're gonna do the job.
What's up, SJ?
It's okay. No, guys, I know it's intense. No worries at all. I just want to say royalty free. I mean, legally, this is what you would call some of this stuff, and it's part of the public domain. And I just think that linguistically is very rich with symbolism. I mean, we've been talking on this call a lot about royalty and bloodlines, but if you have royalty free information, it's in the public. And I think that's one
Interesting.
thing I wanted to say. The other thing, I'm ready to play devil's advocate here. I mean, I think Trump's a stooge and an actor, and I mean, or at least take that side. Like, why isn't QAnon just a Mossad operation? And
Totally,
Trump is
that's
just,
the right question.
so-
to ask.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's-
continue.
No, so to me, this would be the case in point, that Trump was hired, he was an actor for 20 years, they were training him for this position, that his role was to project dominance in the,
What if I
and the-
told you that most of the really red pill people would totally agree with you and still say, yeah, the Great Awakening is coming? How do you reconcile that?
Caddyshack.
well, no, I would be curious to be what do they mean by that then? What does that refer to?
Have you seen that movie
Because-
Caddyshack? Like where there's these young golf caddies that like end up hating the rich dudes who own and use the camp. This is kind of what happened to Trump. He was a Caddyshack for the Royals. He's a goyim, right? Like his job is to turn on the lights on Shabbat. It's not because they can't do it themselves. They have to follow Talmudic law.
A Sabbath goy, yeah.
He's a really
Well,
essential. He's an
there's
essential character.
also-
A lot of people are, but at some
there's-
point he probably didn't like being excluded.
There's a lot
To me,
of
the
truth
proof's
to
in the
that,
pudding.
but
The proof is in the
it's
pudding.
more like
When's
it's
the-
more like it's more clear cut. Like the case with Trump is actually there's a very good solution for it. Something that explains it. Like the 20 years, it's actually 40 years he has been acting.
Yeah,
in the
40
public.
years he's been acting. He's a lifetime actor. Quickly, I think it's instead of focusing on Trump here, let's just pull back. What's the point? All right, what's the Great Awakening? Will humanity be freed? Will the people be
Yeah.
freed, or are we going to be
Yeah.
slaves like we've been my whole life and my father's life, my grandfather's
No,
back?
I
all
don't
the
think
way?
anybody
We're
can be
gonna
freed
get
by
a
someone
taste.
else. I think everyone has to kind of liberate themselves.
And just, if I may say, just briefly, and just on a very, very practical level for me, I mean, I've, seen people making fun of Q, all kinds of people really investigating it. And there are major, things that at least you can tell, Trump and Q and all of that and Flynn and whatever, they are connected. But to me, it just generally wouldn't make sense that you would have a psychological approach the way they're doing it in a meiotical fashion, like Socratic method of pulling information, asking questions, showing all these connections. They may still have, potentially, because I don't know, ulterior bad motives or whatever, but still I don't really see the gain in teaching people critical thinking skills, basically, and just starting digging for themselves and thinking for themselves. And even they themselves putting out information like this information is part of the campaign. which also from that level, as much as Secret Service agent I can think myself into, makes sense. But again, on a baseline level, wouldn't make sense to show all these connections and start people thinking in that systemic
right.
approach.
That's the wrong propaganda approach. They wouldn't do it that way. But what they would do, maybe it's that similar, is attack a group of the public. The only question is, why would they pick royals who are pedophiles? Because we all know that's a real thing. I hope. I mean, it is a real thing. So I hope you know that. And why would he attack the royals themselves?
Is he doing that? That's
He
what I
is.
said. I don't
That's
think
the
he's
irony.
doing that. I disagree. He's not doing that.
He is. Have you read the human trafficking executive orders, where he's taking all property away from human traffickers? Have you seen the
Listen, man, when they arrest the royal family and they
like
go
Prince
after
Andrew.
the people that well, he's not
you have to
arrested, but I
bring
mean,
up
when they
like,
go after the networks of pedophiles that Seville was involved with, Prime Minister Heath and others, look, I'll start believing it.
I mean,
Ghislaine
But what if they
Yeah.
did? What if
Yeah,
they
I'm
did?
all
Like,
with
you
They
you.
don't
haven't.
know
That's
yet.
they haven't. And this is my critique
Okay.
of Q. It's the storm is coming. The storm is coming. Well, let's see it. I haven't seen it.
Okay, go to
Epstein to me is a
justice.gov.
symbolic. Just quickly, he's a symbolic arrest. First of all, he was probably extracted, didn't even die. That's all fake. There's no pictures of Ghislaine Maxwell. There's no pictures of Epstein. They appear to be body doubles. It appears to be a large-scale bloviation to make people think something's happening when nothing has happened. There's no evidence of that. So that's my point here. Show me the proof. Where's the beef? Where's
If
the
you look at the
pudding?
sealed indictments,
Andreas,
Sorry.
now you're gonna let me deliver the background to this guy so he can
For sure.
understand the context. Okay.
And make
so,
sure we're not interrupting each other. You can flash the lips real quick if people know you want to talk, because nothing sounds dumber than everybody at once. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, since this is such a trigger-worthy subject, I'll try to make it quick. 40 years ago, there was some FBI memos written, and now they're declassified, showing that the FBI tapped Trump on the shoulders, saying that they wanted someone who was believable in the business community to honeypot highly level operatives within the mafia. How he would do that was he would do business deals with them to set up, in Atlanta and Atlantic City and New York, great casinos, great hotels, and whatnot. And this was a long time operation. And Roy Cohn, which Trump has been, criticized for having a relationship with, was certainly a part of it. And he knew Epstein. He was the mentor of Epstein, right? He mentored Epstein in how to do this blackmail operation. Now, for better or for worse, it looks like Epstein was set up over 15 to 20 years ago, because what happened, go into 2000, and then Epstein gets an investigation that was probed through the FBI, because a girl was starting to say and spill the beans on Epstein for an incident that happened at Mar-a-Lago, Trump's hotel. When that happened, Trump immediately took distance to Epstein, banned him from all his property, and he was the only one among the elite that went in and testified. And the investigators, they said he sang like a canary. He told them everything. And then that investigation goes on, and it comes to a conclusion. Epstein is freed, and they didn't really get to make this public spectacle about it back then. But
he's also escaped. He's escaped out of the United States.
Yeah, I'm familiar with all this background, by the way. I know all this. So I mean,
in 2009, I'm sure you do, but in 2009, there was another persecutor on the case, and he wanted information, and he tried to look around, and the only guy who wanted to give him information, and also, according to him, gave him useful information, was Trump. And
I get that. But so let's assume Trump didn't have anything to do with pedophilia, and I'm okay with that. That's not what my point is here. My point is, what's he going to do about it? Because if he just kowtows to people in power that are running these operations, that's what it appears is happening. And
right.
So, he could be a Jesus Christ, but I mean, the Q movement is talking about Trump like he is some kind of rescuer and he's going to change the structure of the pedophilic elite. And what I'm saying is that there's no evidence for that. That has not happened yet. All we've gotten is the spectacle in the media of Epstein
Well,
and
like-
Maxwell.
Can I just say something really quickly though? Because like
Okay.
I used to work for CNN and I spent a lot of time, around a lot of media bullshit. And I'll tell you, they've never responded to anything the way they are responding to this right now. And I do spend most of my time not watching mainstream media, but like looking at justice.gov, going through the sealed indictments that are on shared Google documents that you can get access to. I mean, there are groups that are sharing this information directly from the Justice Department, including the
Yeah.
Justice Department itself. And you can see Operation Broken Hearts is a great example. You can look at what happened at the Super Bowl where 1,000 people were arrested. Basically, you can look everywhere and you can see pedophilia of all things being attacked the way drugs were attacked during the Bush Senior administration. So this
So
is
to say
this is
that
why
there's
are they
no
not
evidence
There
of
definitely
like
is
a
evidence.
takedown of human trafficking is really absurd at this point because
And-
there's
and-
ample evidence.
Let's parse it out. Let's parse it out. Okay, people arrest low-level pedophiles all the time. Look, if you're trafficking,
No,
in
but you
that
don't
stuff,
arrest
you will
like
be
a
arrested.
30,000 like a ring network during COVID, and then another ring in Romania and another ring in Turkey, a giant ring in Norway, I think.
These are the largest arrests in the most consistent arrests, the most rapid arrests in history on the subject. Usually it would be about heroin and cocaine, and those are things the CIA control as well. So that would be my question. Why not focus on the things you've always focused on? Heroin addicts and, prostitution or something, but
Well,
to
when is it
focus
someone-
on the children.
Is it someone that's in a high level of power? I mean, I've seen these stories, and I grant you that. There's stories that appear somewhat regularly. We'd have to go back and see if it's an increase or how much of an increase it is about
Again,
a ring being.
no, well,
hold on,
the
hold on, hold on,
media
hold on.
news coming out now say it is
hold
an
on, about a
increase.
ring.
Well,
Let's
they
do it
say,
one
no,
by
it's
one,
just
okay?
because the point. No, but I just have to immediately point out that the news themselves say that this is historically the biggest bust ever.
Okay, well, so let me make my point because it answers that and it raises questions related to that. Is
Okay.
that great? So yeah, there's some arrests. Let's even say there's the biggest arrest ever, whatever, what have you. I'm waiting for an arrest to be so big that it's a name that we all know that's in power and that has a lot of power. Someone like Prince Andrew, someone who would be connected to the royal pedophile rings that run the world. We have not seen that yet objectively. We've seen 1,000 people, blah, blah, blah. We haven't seen the name of like a CEO from the Fortune 500 being arrested for that. So I'm waiting for that. I want
We're
the
getting
pudding. I want
close
the
to
pudding.
that. We just had like a UN official that worked with the highest level of children protective services for the UN. He was just arrested. And George Nadar, that helped with the Mueller probe, he was arrested for human trafficking.
No one's heard of these people. No one's heard of these people.
I can go over hundreds of people that were arrested, including
Well, yeah, you
in
got a
top
point.
10
You
top
got a
10
point in
Google.
that.
No, wait, top 10 Google. Look at what happened with Larry Schmidt after he's been in trouble for legal situations for actually human trafficking. Google itself has had to distance themselves. Here's the real
Bancor
question
as
you're asking.
well.
Here's the real answer to the question though. Why are you not seeing this more around your NASDAQ newspapers? Well, obviously, because the president's an economist, and so he wants to make sure that these people step down before they're arrested, or that this is what the entire propaganda of QAnon has been. And I'll call it propaganda. I'll agree with you there.
Well,
this
it's
idea-
necessary disinformation.
But it is definitely, yeah. There's disinformation, there's propaganda, and I can't say that Trump's an amazing guy and his hair looks funny. I'll give you all of this.
And he talks
But
about
this-
his daughter weird.
Yeah, cool. It's all, I'm down. But like, here's the thing. Like, at the end of the day, he understands that these people, if they really are doing these things, cannot just be all eradicated at once from economies, because they are in charge of these companies. These companies, they're required, because of the contracts they signed, to step down for health reasons. And there's been thousands of CEOs stepping down for health reasons, except for the one who just died, by the way, from the big pharma company, Pharma Dead 65. Let me look up his name really quickly.
And
Jonathan Sackler from the OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma died just the other day at 65. And right in the process of changing over the hands of all these things. He might have been one of the guys who refused to just go with the flow. So I think that there's tons of evidence on your side that like that things aren't changing except for some natural pattern. But man, how cool is this natural? It must be an amazing, magical, astrological pattern then, because if we're talking about tens of thousands of sealed indictments, 70, 100,000 people are in trouble
We're
all at
talking
once.
170,000.
That is gosh darn lucky, you know, and I'm down with it if it's not a real plan. But what's funny is that the propaganda machine, QAnon, has really done a good job taking credit for it. So that's also influenced the police, it's influenced the state, and I
But
bet you if you're a
why
CEO,
should
you're
we
scared.
ignore like all the predictions? Like Q has been able to predict very specific things occurring on the political scene with utmost precision. If anyone on YouTube were to do that, they would be hailed kings. So
I don't think
that's
anyone
evidence. That's
questioned-
evidence that it's an operation.
I
That's
agree. I
evidence
agree.
that it's a
I agree with
Mossad
Anderson
operation.
on here.
Okay.
I agree with Anderson on here. Actually, I think that not necessarily a Mossad operation, but probably, but like
Quote
it does,
unquote Mossad. Quote
it
unquote
does-
Mossad. Alphabet
totally.
networks. Yeah.
triple
but
parentheses.
that wouldn't
I
really
totally,
make sense since
Well,
they're
hold on,
really
hear out-
waging blows against the Mossad. The Mossad wouldn't attack itself
And-
to save itself,
Wait,
wouldn't it?
are you sure? Are you sure that there wouldn't
Sometimes
be?
you got to cut off an arm to prevent gang.
Well-
You don't think there would be a civil war in Israel? Have you seen what's going on in Israel? Like
Big
it totally
protests
could
right
happen.
now, just as we speak. But
Okay,
let's.
guys.
I just want to go back here. Let's go ahead, Raphael.
As well, you know, we also are about time to do a music break. If you guys are okay with that, you know, but we can, you know, pick it up here once again. All that I remember from one of the earlier Q posts, because of course it's always a big question. I guess it is known by now that whatever quote unquote Israel is leading world tech in so-called security, which is, you know, interesting in itself. And I just believe that there was one post where it said something along the lines of Israel comes last, and that it would not be mentioned anymore. So there's, you know, definitely something interesting happening there as well.
The Trump
And-
phrase "the best is yet to come" is in relation to Israel because they said we save the best for last. They said that first, and then someone asked something in relation to Israel, and then they said there's a very specific reason why we haven't mentioned Israel once, saving the best for last. So they pointed out that Israel equals best, and they're saving them for last. And then the first questions were, well, who are first then? And then we got the answers immediately thereafter. First was North Korea, second was Iran, and third and last is going to be Israel.
So let me just jump in because
yeah.
this is that highlights the danger, and this is why I think the QAnon is so dangerous. Okay, so think
Dangerous
about
means
it. Yeah,
authoritative.
hold on. No, dangerous against for the people. So it will increase oppression of poor people and the common working people. So let me just say this, and then we can go to music. But think about it for a second. All right. Hey, don't talk about that. We're going to save that last. Don't talk about that. And in the interim, Israel annexes the West Bank, annexes the Golan Heights, expands taking over the Temple Mount, bombs Iran and Syria. No one talks about it in the media. But hey, you can't talk about, hey, we're going to get to that. The storm's coming. Do you see the psychological power of the narrative, of how it can placate? The other thing is that these are the natural resistance. This is the group that would be naturally resistant to a lot of the things Trump has done in terms of banning bump stocks, in terms of, even lockdowns. If it was a Democrat in power, these people would be armed saying no. They would be fighting and resisting all over the country. You put Trump in, and then you tell people, you tell people through a Q, hey, the storm's coming, relax, relax, relax. It's a placative effect of what would be the natural group that would be resisting this stuff. That's the genius of it. That's the propaganda.
But that doesn't really make sense because few people are really alert to the Israel narrative Q has even done because it's not part of a regular Q post. It was somewhere on 4chan someone asked
he's
Q.
just saying the entire propaganda machine. And here's the funny part to me, the funniest part right before music
Well, no,
is that
because
I
the premise
agree
would
with
be
both of
the
you
premise
guys.
would be that propaganda machine is somehow aiding Israel. And I don't see
think it
the
will in
argument
end.
here.
And changing Israel into a better place isn't, come on, that could benefit Israel in a lot of ways.
Well, aiding the people, ideally, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, the people. We're talking about
the road
the
to
deep
hell.
state of Israel.
But Victor, never forget, Anderson has great points here. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So you have to be
that's
careful.
why we're
all the
not
way.
evaluating intentions. We're evaluating actions and results.
Actions. That's all I care about. When you're annexing the West Bank and killing Palestinians, that's not. I don't support that. And if Q is going to say don't talk about it because a storm is coming, I
Q
think
hasn't
that's
said not
dangerous.
talk about it.
That's
No,
what I mean.
they've definitely talked about what they want to do to stop that, and the idea that a secular state in Israel cannot be a racial state, and that they're invading Palestine. I mean, like the things that are going on the other side of things, especially in Egypt right now. There's a lot more to this story, but I think music's about to start.
I'm grateful that I'm somewhat ignorant of all this, and it's funny because I can hear valid points on everybody's side. So it's always funny as a double Gemini just to listen and observe. And not that I want to get off into a tangent, but it kind of reminds me of, and I'm not going to get into the history of this because I'm sure you guys have great counterpoints and stuff. With Winston Churchill, like being like, look, we have the code of the Germans and we're going to let them bomb some cities so we don't know. Like, that could be a justification, though I'm not comfortable with it. Bottom line, it's a fucking Game of Thrones type situation, and there's a whole lot of little fingers playing, and, you know, what we see as major heads are more Cersei types, and I hear you, Anderson, in terms of, like, I'd love to see major players go down, but bottom line, my hope is that I think the vibe, if you want, the frequency or the Great Awakening, however, the Kundalini of the consciousness is rising. So a song I picked, I think, Raphael, you got my little note, is a Justice, ironically, French group called Justice, and they have a song called Civilization.
No, it's Jackson 5.
Oh, god damn it. Well, go to the messages really quick and play that one. Because the Jackson 5 one is going to be for tomorrow when we have the music for 1, 2, 3, which is why I synced it up. That's why I asked you at the beginning.
What about that Michael Jackson Are the Children Here song? You know where your children are.
Well, we could do that too. I'm kind of
care
indifferent.
about us.
That's
my favorite.
Black
Black and white. We
Raphael
didn't talk
could
about
DJ whatever, but if he wants to take a music break, cool. If not, cool. Like I'm generally indifferent. I'm having fun. I'm eating the Michael Jackson popcorn gif.
The most synchronistic episode 122. What I'd like to bring attention to, Victor has just left, it appears, but still also SJ is still around and Andreas. So we've been talking about, the different perspectives on Q and Trump. What I find very interesting, number one, because it's, most closely related to the whole lockdown and, let's say, viral situation or poisonous situation right now, is the very basic idea of infection theory and the historical argument to what extent, diseases are actually transmittable, and to what extent a disease actually is something you can catch and not just, a natural process of your body detoxifying. And we may have discussed this somewhat in terms of the American Medical Association, taking over with allopathy and kicking out all the naturopaths and that kind of understanding. And then in terms of, judge them by their fruits. Except, the only other one known is this Ugandan president. There is some YouTube recording where he apparently reads from like a Rockefeller, Rothschild, whatever document describing exactly Fabian society style how the lockdown should proceed. Very interesting speech, and it appears to be him in terms of voice. But aside from him and maybe this other one, or it was the same, who was testing goats positive for COVID-19 and made a joke about it, and papayas and so on. The only other public figure, president level, that I know that has, not towed the line completely with the whole, let's just call it pharma vaccination scam or whatever, which at the very, very least is highly risky. And he has, self-medicated with hydroxychloroquine and, mentioned that time and time again. You could see Fauci kind of, like squirming or something. But no one else has done that. And certainly no one with his profile to even offer the idea of a therapeutic solution that would completely make all the draconian lockdown, mask and distancing measures, let them, throw out the window. So that's one quite important aspect for me.
Yeah, and I want to jump in because I think this is where I would want to go with this stuff. Like, and we don't have to debate Q. I actually don't even like debating it, but I couldn't help if it's going to come up just to throw in a different perspective.
I like that you're not a debater, you're a discordist. We're just discoursing. This is totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah, just to discuss. I mean, it's worth it. But I mean, this big pharma, big tech, surveillance state, technocracy. This is, to me, the most interesting thing about the current moment. And how does Q or really anything relate to that? And I think there's probably something to be said that the people that are running Q might also be, or where do they stand? I mean, I'm open-ended to that.
Well, in your favor on this thought, Brezhnevinsky, right, who kind of he wrote my favorite book, the Technotronic Era. I mean, I wouldn't say it's Dune's probably better, but still, it's a great book about the future. And it said in the 70s, it was predicting that by 2020 or something like that, trapper keepers with Dawson Creek would take over the world, and that the public wouldn't be able to think or reason for themselves. They'll only be able to parrot information that they're given. Here's a quote from it. The Technotronic Era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite, unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date complete files containing even the most personal information about every citizen. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by authorities. And this is kind of this idea. We built this Technotronic Era, and then people get ads based on what they're saying with their phones recording. The computer says, oh, Hawaii, I heard Hawaii. Here's a ticket to Hawaii. The cheapest one that you can get will be this time. And so they can predict when and where you'll do whatever you'll do. So the Technotronic Era is very real and very scary. On the same side of that, I don't think that we're necessarily in any disagreements. It's like that's what we're in. And looking at China, they've actually done the Black Mirror thing where you can't open doors unless you have a high enough social score. When the camera scans you, it sees you and sees how valuable you are contributing to society. And that gets into, even on the astrologic level, the Sirius star. There's two stars, the A and B, the dog star and the B star, and the Mormons and the Masons and a lot of groups kind of worship the beehive and the Solomonic magic, this idea of the femininity of the queen bee, and that they're all in this. No one is out of a job in a beehive. Everyone's a drone. But the other is the dog star, which is like the lone wolf. It's a kind of freedom. So we're constantly, at odds with ourselves. Do we want more freedom or do we want more capacity? Because a lot of time freedom isn't capacity. Responsibility and being taught how to use these crazy machines, we might be able to have more capacity. But is capacity actually valuable? And, the Tao would say, no, like you're better off just being in nature. But, how does that change any of our lives? It's really up to you. Do you want to be free, or do you want to be, part of a bigger, more powerful system? And it's a reasonable question
Just
to ask.
briefly, even here, honestly, guys, at least to me, if I can remember correctly that parallel reality, I have envisioned these kind of capacities as a child, I would say, all the time. Like everything, could be measured, and all of these things potentially maybe even predicted. I guess the point being
Minority
now,
Report.
as well, the point being now, not so much the prediction part, but just like, everything becoming visible. The one realization I had is that luckily consciousness and the Akash is recording everything. We are all already supremely connected to our own operator, being our own higher selves, that can synchronistically deliver any and all information, opportunity, and everything better than any technical system ever could. That's my view. So that's the number one. And then number two is just now that we kind of recreate somewhat these systems technologically, if we do it very smart, it can actually even be done in a way to reinforce synchronicity in a positive way. That's the way I'm looking at it. And then it's just a question of how do we build these systems, because we can build them and they can deliver all kinds of, amazing and comfortable information and capacity without needing to be a negative command and control centralized system for suppression. That's not an inbuilt necessity.
Yeah, I think
Well,
that's
it's kind of
really
like.
wise.
Oh, go ahead, SJ.
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead, Jim. Go ahead.
Well, the thing that came to mind really quick, and I don't care where we go with this conversation at all at this point because it's fascinating nonetheless. Because there's pros and cons. It's yin and yang. So it's like, just like Star Wars, like I guess in some way the Empire went around and subjugated totalitarian kind of Space Force rules on people and upgraded them to a system, which made it possible for them to do certain things, but at the same time they lost their kind of tribalistic cultural heritage or whatever. There's give and take, and it's depending kind of on who's at the cockpit, because I think some people it's weird because I have a lot of Jupiter. I'm a lot
Depends on how the control system itself is built. Sorry, just briefly, because if it just most simple example, and it's not the best, but just as cryptocurrencies, whatever, distributed systems, you can have systems of of communication and so on, where you find consensus in a different way, don't have the same issue with choke points and power corruption and so on. I mean, there are models for these kind of systems, and then we can implement them. We can have the benefits of, proper, let's say, whatever method of opinion and decision forming and communication channels, and allowing for the utmost real subsidiarity, federalism, and individual responsibility. We can build such kind of systems which then also still could be, worldwide and so on, but don't have to be, again, this negative aspect of a centralized control.
Well,
Yeah, and I think
just to briefly finish what I was kind of saying, because it's not even important really, but the idea is I think it takes both. And given I have Jupiter in Aquarius in 7th house, so my relationships are pretty free and different. I'm an 11th house Sun and Moon Gemini, so Aquarius energy. I'm kind of a faux Aquarius, if you want to put it that way. And I know Raphael's got a North Node in Aquarius.
Married or something?
I am getting married, engaged, but that's
Pretty cool.
It is dope. The Dow howls. I didn't ask for that. It kind of happened. But anyway,
yes.
well, I mean, it's fascinating. I love her. Shout out Haley. But the idea is there's this weird
That's more
kind of
like
thing with right. Gotta get in line real quick. Freedom. I mean, what we've inherited is the ideas of freedom. I've likened it kind of you can sit on say you go out to recess or whatever, and it's anybody do whatever they want, free play. Okay, some kids are playing tic-tac-toe, some kids are fucking beating one kid up, whatever, all this shit's going on, right? Whereas if you create some structure, okay, we're gonna play basketball, it's not as free, but there's more there's more enjoyment somehow. At least for those participating, obviously, and then the people who suck at basketball don't want to play basketball, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems like there's this give and take. I think we've kind of idealized the idea of freedom. I'm kind of with Raphael, where it's I don't know if we were ever actually free, whether it's spirit or the predilections of the cosmos and astrology or whatever. I think there's certain, I don't even know how to put it, conditions that are always kind of demanding certain results. And we've told ourselves from French Revolution kind of politics and stuff in early America, it's freedom means, I don't even know, libertarian hyper independence, Han
nothing
Solo.
left to lose.
yeah,
Janis
just
Joplin.
another word for nothing left to lose. Yeah, just thinking the same thought there.
Han
It's
Solo
the
was
only
free,
truth.
but he wasn't
Voltaire
very
would say.
happy, right? Han Solo ultimately was shit, I guess I should pick a side. But when he was kind of living the American rebellious thing, where it's
You
just
really
I'm
only
gonna do
see
what I
him-
want.
You really only see him when he's in love with Leia and she's not putting out. I think that's when he's pissed off. For the most part, he's probably having a good time. He's got his friends. He's got this chessboard. He's got a spaceship. It's got room in it. I don't see him as being super bummed, except for once he meets his other half, and then it breaks his heart. But also, I see Han Solo as Solomon, and so Solomon had this clear problem with a princess who was not of the right line, and eventually it drove him mad. So I think that's also what they're trying to say about this guy, who would have otherwise been able to live his life without classism, with total free mobility. He's a smuggler, but he's going through places where there's no law, so it's more like being a cowboy or a parcel delivery. He's bringing spice. That's his whole thing.
There's a sense of needing to be a scavenger right now in the world that's being constructed, and I think that's a great analogy, the Han Solo analogy, because I'm someone who's trying to move across borders, and I'm quite mobile. Things change every day. Getting into a country, it might be available for a week, and then it closes down because there's new rules. And I really appreciate you bringing up the technocratic age, because that's a big new Brzezinski book. I throw it out to people and tell them when they try to question the idea that there's been an agenda or people working for a technocratic agenda. I said, well, read this book. It's written in the 1970s, and I'm sure it happened even before that. I want to just throw two things out here. The Pentagon is now had just announced this week that Google and all of the big tech companies will be working with the Pentagon on their AI weaponry program. There was 2 years of resistance where Google was playing nice, saying, oh, we're not going to do that because we don't think it's ethical. Now everybody's behind it. And I think this is I'm hopeful ultimately, because I think this is a war of unseen realms, that the human spirit is indelible. We have this kind of unlimited access in our soul, that's the ultimate trump card and weapon. We just throw that down, and there'll be egresses, there'll be ways to maneuver here, but we have to be like scavengers. And so anyhow, I like where this conversation is going, because I think ultimately, like Q, setting it, whatever is true about Q doesn't matter. This is really what's ultimately matters. Like in our own hearts and minds, how are we navigating this to fully actualize and become who we're meant to be, and achieve kind of our soul's purpose.
Another word besides scavenger is scoundrel, because in Star Wars, a lot of time they use the term soldier or consular or scoundrel. So scoundrel's from the 1580s, and it's an English-French escondre, which means to hide oneself or to put away and store something, which is similar to a scavenger, someone who finds things, but this is someone who collects things, kind of like a squirrel keeps things. And so they looked at Han Solo kind of as a scoundrel. But the other thing was, when you're talking back about Brezhnevinsky, his daughter recently was one of the people who came against Biden for sexually harassing them, and she wrote this whole thing. And so, you know, and don't get me wrong, like I believe everyone who says everything in the media, like especially about that. Like actually, in some circumstances, I'm inclined to bet it's true, but you know. Who's to say if she's saying this because she wants to take down Biden for her father, or because she wants to take down Biden in opposition to her father, or what that all could mean. But at the end of the day, it's interesting that of all people, Brezhnevinsky's daughter is stepping against Biden, because then that kind of puts forward Trump, and it either makes it Brezhnevinsky's candidate or in opposition to Brezhnevinsky's candidate, because if the daughter and the father are not getting along, then that could easily make sense. But it seems like they're kind of on the same page. So it makes you wonder, was Brezhnevinsky publishing this book because he wanted it to happen? Or is he just observing what's happening because the Club of Rome in the 60s are already doing it? And he's saying, dude, you got to be aware. And that puts Brezhnevinsky in a new light for me, because I always kind of assumed he was super like into it. But now, as I get older, I realize maybe it's possible he was just aware that that was what's happening. And it becomes kind of the question about this new era. If like we're heading into this era and we can stop it somehow.
Yeah, it could be argued on a basic level if we just, draw the lines with X share and X protect, like who is, protecting information, who's sharing it. If you're talking about Zbigniew, or however unpronounceable his name is, I mean, at least that, pretty much popularized the idea, right? Even though he got demonized along with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's dead, by the way. He passed on. So just to be clear about that, I believe.
Oh, is he?
What's funny to me is like
2017 he passed
so
on.
recently.
Oh, okay.
It's funny to me because one Trump got basically inaugurated, like the Trump Tower, star card year. Anyway, but the point is, I think in some way this gets tricky because I think everyone's kind of personal proclivities and maybe programming and honestly like life calling, all this kind of stuff, karma is going to maybe play out differently. So there's not a democratized one size fits all kind of way about this. But what we really have to be kind of doing is worrying about our personal sovereignty. And if we can have a place of balance and equanimity within ourselves, then the waves won't, it's like Peter walking on the water in the Bible. It's like, yo, come out and walk. It's like, but I'm going to drown. It's like, typically, but you have a power within you, if you trust this process, essentially, that you can walk on water. I think we need to be kind of focusing on that. That's why I have friends that are very QAnon, pro QAnon. My brother is probably the biggest anti-Trumper I know. He's written a 30-page paper to my family saying why not to vote for Trump, all this kind of stuff. I'm hearing
30
all
pages
this kind
already.
Yeah, it's going up all the time. And I mean, it's funny because I think it's a matter of where we put our focus. If we're focused on the immediate kind of chaos, not only will one drive oneself mad, I think that's as SJ knows, I think that's because he was part of the sync book, and Andreas knows about the sync book. I think that's one of the reasons it kind of splintered. It got so distracted into the foreground of the chaos that people couldn't agree about some fundamental universal truths, like we're all witnessing the Tao or whatever.
Or the ideal is like one wanted one and one wanted another, way for it to the flow to go.
Right, which is kind of like I Chinging it. It's like, look, there's always going to be conditions. It comes and goes. Like, make sure you're kind of staying balanced eternally, which is going to look different for everybody. So the balanced Sith is going to look different than a balanced Jedi, obviously, and all this shit. But it's like, this is funny that I'm saying this. I think Raphael's probably laughing. It's like, it's a big fucking movie. We've asked for the most entertaining movie in the universe, and this is what we've manifested, apparently, where it's got bloodlines and fucking corporations and espionage and double talk and hearsay and all this shit. And kind of it gets tricky because I think my first reaction is to say that's disempowering if I pull back, but I think especially after watching Avatar: Last Airbender,
And
sometimes you got go ahead.
Sorry, I was saying, why does it always come back to Horizon Zero Dawn?
That's funny because I don't know that shows like resets and like engineering at a weird level in a sci-fi way. But the thing about Aang is like he like instead of pursuing this Fire Lord at the end of the day, he lets him come to him, and I think we have to let life come to and through us, as opposed to running and quote leaning on an understanding, as the Bible might say, where it's like there's only so much our human minds can grok, even with mystery schools at our back, even with divination tools, even all this. Like we still have to kind of take a deep breath and just watch and realize that the birthing process, the gestational process, never ends. It's a never-ending story. It's a constant birthing story. So it's like, just like babies have to, once that amniotic fluid, like the water breaks and they're like kind of going, it's like that's not fun. I'm sure that's horrific and apocalyptic. We're kind of in a similar situation right now, so we kind of have to just like breathe through it. Some of us will cry. Some of us will, like when the baby comes out.
I would say
changes.
also because in terms of what Anderson has been saying, man, like I'll tell you, man, you've not lost. You've continued to hold on to the most important thing. I'll agree with a lot of the things that Victor said because, like, I feel like I've had privileged information by looking at the .gov sites and JSTOR, which is like the library, like legal libraries of court cases and what's going on in sealed indictments. I've seen enough things to see that makes me a bit convinced. But he hasn't, as much as you have held on to the most important thing. You've held on to the most important thing, which is that trust no man, have no faith, don't have faith in man. You know what I mean? Like have faith in God or the stars or something, like in gambling, but like don't have it in man. And so this idea that QAnon and Trump and everything could just be this perfect answer and solution to everything is very, very dangerous. And I don't think it's the right approach. Having said that, I do think that there are some really interesting things going on very close to the top. And it's probably the most fascinating battle that could have happened in the last like 400 to 500 years. So I mean, it's clandestine. It's everything Star Wars. It's crazy, And yeah,
the point being for me, I mean, even what I would just say, while I'm always most skeptical of any power structures and strange, obvious, psyops, which Q also must be, even just by the definition of how it's set up, obviously. I would not completely rule out the possibility, of some great white brotherhood faction also existing within these realms, at least not precluded just out of principle, right? Because I was always like, these kind of guys, Rosicrucians, whatever, positively polarized, they must be somewhere, right? But even if that were the case, and let's say, Patriots in control, whatever, and everything's gonna be fine, golden age, even if they would have that planned, how far could they really move? If not, still you would have quite a significant portion of the population literally waking up, because if people would just stay ignorant, the next negative control system could be set up immediately. So I'm all with you, and I'm completely against the idea of putting faith in any external authority, no matter how you call it, because ultimately anyhow it's all yourself, and that's something one may always remain aware of. But just, kind of putting it into a relative perspective and at least allowing the possibility, but also recognizing even if they were on the top level, all amazingly set up, it's still up to each and every one. That idea doesn't change for me, no matter how great signs and takedowns or changes I could see coming from Q or Trump or whatever.
Yeah, like why haven't we talked about Kanye?
Can I just say here quickly? I agree completely, guys, and that you've got, this is the point. This is the great point. It's a principle-based analysis of the situation, and these are the principles that I also ascribe to. Autonomy, human freedom. Don't be skeptical, but I'm certainly open. I mean, I believe it's true. There's got to be white hats, and they're disclosing things at all times, and there's these greater battles happening. But it does beg the question: what is this reality? I mean, these are the questions that I think are most interesting. Who runs this realm? What is the human soul vis-a-vis the rulers of this realm?
In my view.
But we have this soul, but right, what if it's true, like the Gnostic vision, that there are these archons, and that this is just the nature of this realm? Like we're in a kind of archonic prison, but we have this beautiful human soul that can actualize You know, I mean, these are the things that I think would help us view like these higher level determinations. They can filter down to help us understand something like Q. One other thing I want to say quickly.
Definitely.
I did a YouTube video predicting the Democrats will win based on some astrology, and so I just want to, if people are interested in that, I think Trump's done.
I'm
I think
very
that, yeah,
interested in
Biden will
that.
be
We're happy
coming
to
in,
see
and the
that.
Democrats will be in. And it's a short
Honestly,
video, about 13
I'd
minutes.
almost be ready to bet against that.
Would
but
I'd bet against it. I would bet shekels
Well,
against
what's
it.
the
I'd bet
what's the
50
astrological?
shekels against it right now. I'll put
Me
50
too.
shekels down.
I'll
because
bet you,
here's-
I'll bet you some money. But I
Cool.
can run
And not
through it
a
if you
lot of
want.
money. I think 50 shekels is like $1. Like I do want to watch the video, but the thing is, it's not that I'm arguing. It's just that to me, from my understanding, Biden is the like Creepy Joe is the ultimate nightmare. I can't imagine a more like I thought Hillary was
gonna
my
be
most
Michael.
scary thing.
Andreas,
Like,
it's gonna
the-
be Michael.
That would the most terrifying thing possible.
You mean
would be
Kanye?
Michael Obama. Well, if Kanye wins, it's cool. But Michael Obama, I think Raphael's referring to the vice president.
Oh,
Yeah, but like in terms, I hope I'm not just pulling that out of my ass.
That's
That'd be
what's
really
coming. That's what's
messed
coming,
up.
man.
Yeah,
the
and that's
nightmare's
the-
coming.
the thing. That
That's
it's the ultimate nightmare. It's
boy.
the ultimate nightmare. And from my perspective, that dude. You should see my episode on the Boogaloo, which shows the war that's coming. Because if you have a cancel cultural revolution of Pol Pot Maoists against these neo-libertarians who have weapons and militias. The militia comes from the Sanskrit word for an assembly. What you're going to see is probably like the biggest violent purge, like on the movies and propaganda and all that stuff that they've created just to wipe out the lower and middle classes that we've ever seen.
Unless we transcend.
Unless we transcend. So I don't think that it'd be a good thing for the Democrats to get back in power. For also on the principal idea that I don't think that self-determination should ever be turned over to a dictatorship, let alone a majorative dictatorship.
I agree completely. I don't think it's a good thing, and I can just run down and take like a minute or less. I can do.
yeah. I want to hear the
quick.
astrology.
So it's all about Aquarius. The last 4 times Saturn transited in Aquarius, and the 5th time, if you want to include Teddy Roosevelt, he was a Republican, but still he was a progressive reformer. You have FDR, he was the president when Saturn was Aquarius in the 30s. You have LBJ and Kennedy when Saturn was Aquarius in the 60s, and they both had Great Society and the New Deal. In the 90s, you have Clinton, who was president during Saturn and Aquarius. And so it's set up. So that's the one argument, that Saturn and Aquarius actually is the Democratic Party. The second argument is that the last 3 times we've had a great conjunction, or actually more than that, but the last 3 for sure, a great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, which happens every 20 years, you have a changing of the party in power. So Bush gave way to Clinton, Carter gave way to Reagan. That was the great conjunction in the 1980s. In the 2000, you had Clinton giving away to Bush, so you had a change in power with that great conjunction. And then the great conjunction in before that was the 60s, Eisenhower giving way to Kennedy. And these great conjunctions, it's the symbolism of the conjunction, is the new age. It's the 20-year beat of the reality changing. And so those are the 2 basic astrological points that make the case. And it doesn't have to be Biden. This could be, they could replace Biden. They could put anybody in there. It's the idea that the Democrats will be
I
in.
pray to Allah.
The other thing about that, quickly, why it's not a good thing, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a good thing, I'm just saying that's what the astrology seems to be suggesting, is that look what else happened with Saturn and Aquarius, the coup, they blew Kennedy's head off, all right, the coup in the early 1960s. After that time, there was a massive expansion in the military-industrial complex. I won't even go into what happened in Germany in 1930s with Saturn and Aquarius. We all know that story. So there's this great authoritarian tendency with Saturn and Aquarius. And so that's how I'm seeing this potentially unfolding. I hope I'm wrong, but we're going to have an authoritarian, medicalized, medical authoritarianism is coming with
That's for certain.
Democrats coming into power. And I want to read this quickly because this is something that I think everybody should hear. Did I read this last time in here? The Agamben essay, Giorgio Agamben, the Italian
I
philosopher.
don't think so, but either
This is
way, feel
necessary.
free.
It's 100% necessary. Everybody has to read this. This guy was a widely expected philosopher in the academy. He's 70 or older, and he's been canceled because he basically came out and I'll just read this paragraph. And this is what we're in. All right, get ready. This is what's happening. This is the authoritarianism that's coming. This is the Aquarius energy that's about to descend on the world. So he's talking about, this is the quote, one paragraph. So what Zelberman described in 2013 has now been duly confirmed. And you can find this essay online. It's called Biosecurity and Politics by Giorgio Agamben. And so he went through earlier in the essay and talked about this theory by a philosopher about medical tyranny, basically. So he's saying what Zelberman described in 2013 has now been duly confirmed. It is evident that apart from the emergency situation linked to a certain virus that may in the future be replaced by another, there it is. Yes.
Keep talking.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Okay.
That's
Sorry.
just-
Okay. Sorry.
yeah.
Sorry. So it is evident that apart from the emergency situation linked to a certain virus that may in the future be replaced by another, at issue is the design of a paradigm of governance whose efficacy will exceed that of all forms of government known thus far in the political history of the West. If already, in the progressive decline of ideologies and political beliefs, security reasons allowed citizens to accept limitations on their liberty that they previously were unwilling to accept, biosecurity has shown itself capable of presenting the absolute cessation of all political activity and all social relations as the maximum form of civic participation. Okay, that it was possible to see the paradox of organizations of the left, traditionally in the habit of claiming rights and denouncing violations of the Constitution. They're now accepting limitations on liberty made by ministerial decree devoid of any legal basis and which even fascism couldn't dream of imposing. And there's one other part here I want to say, then I'll turn this back over to you guys. But the idea here, this is in that paragraph above, he says that producing a sort of superlative good citizen in which imposed obligations are presented as evidence of altruism, and the citizen no longer has a right to health safety, but the citizen becomes juridically obligated to health, biosecurity. And that's what we're running into. You're not going to have a choice. You have to be healthy, and the government has full reign to make sure that you are healthy. And it's an extremely dangerous time right now for the world. Okay.
It's like very livestock-esque. It's like, let's make sure you're good for the show.
And just very, very simply put, okay, number one, what's the positive spin on Jupiter-Saturn conjunct? What I can also say is, although on this particular issue, I'm not really trusting Bashar too much, is he's been referencing something along the lines that whatever is red or something will be turned blue when looking at the political, let's say, map or the states. No idea. Again, it comes down to me like on a very practical level. And I know it's not just about information in this world, but this really comes back again to the idea of health. Like, what is health? How do you stay healthy? And are you self-responsible for your health, or do you have to be, and can you be protected, from viral transmissions and so on and so forth? Because if people just understand it, and this scam is kind of recent, like we mentioned, early 20th century, then this is all over. So in terms of medical tyranny idea, that's what it comes down to me, whether people understand whatever they exactly believe in, how to keep themselves healthy or not. It's simple as that.
I love also that you brought up Agamben because, it ties full circle back into the discussion about the Club of Rome, and their metric growth models they were doing in the 60s and 70s that were explaining what happens when there's too much growth and kind of what led to the Georgia Guidestone's concepts of the elite. So it all seems to be like a question at the end of the day. Like, and it's funny how close we are to the point of the choice where they say you have to act now to get the deal to buy the car from the car salesman. But they're saying, do you want golden chains? Do you want to have a limited populace? Do you want to have these control mechanisms? Do you want to have your DNA and your neural lace with like nanobots that can control and help? Do you want your brain to be taught everything so that you vote the correct way for the correct thing? And a lot of people would say at this point, I think more than ever, which is the scariest part, because they've been led to it slowly. The veil has been lifted slowly. They think to themselves, yeah, I want golden change. I mean, I get that I'm losing this, but it's not that important to me. I don't even use it. And they have all these other things. So they've really adapted people to kind of want this. And that's probably the scariest part, is when you tell people today the truth, some of them know it and they don't care. I think that scares me the most about it.
In response really quickly to Raphael's kind of like Bashar sentiment without red turning blue and all this stuff, I think that's what we're talking about. Like people who would be traditionally very much for like personal rights and civil, like liberals, let's just say, are more or less the ones being like, yo, if you don't wear a mask, you're an asshole. Whereas conservatives are like, I want my freedom, I got my guns kind of thing, or, you know, whatever. They're more liberty seeking as opposed to necessarily like dictatorial or whatever.
Right. So I'm just kind of suggesting that if people would understand the basics of health, then this actually could be proven in a whatever scientific way everyone could agree on. And my strong impression also kind of is that because of the way the media is structured right now, it appears as if, you know, certain moves are happening. That's my view, at least. And in the background, you know, in terms of silent majority and so on, I'm not so certain. And we have talked about this herd mentality idea. And also now you don't know how many people willingly put on the mask and still have a completely different viewpoint. You know, those exist as well. So it's not, I guess, always that obvious, and there is always a charade happening on multiple levels, as we know.
Yeah, I'll be putting on a mask, you know, when I get on my plane, and if I'm getting into Germany potentially in 2 weeks, I put on my mask to go to the grocery store. I take it right off, but I'm at the level where I can have strategic compliance. It's not that onerous to wear it for 15 minutes and gather some groceries. I'd rather have the food than
This is
not
how
wear
they
a mask.
This is how they started, man. I mean, like,
I know.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong.
It's
I've been
true.
wearing.
It's
I've been
true.
wearing.
I know.
I've been wearing the plague mask since before it was cool. Like I have a beak, and I can.
So did Michael Jackson.
Yeah, totally.
Nice, the plague doctor.
I feel pretty neat about it. But like the deal is that at the end of the day, when you start wearing the star, eventually you end up in the camp. It takes not very long, and it just depends on how quickly you start complying with things. And if society keeps doing that, then eventually that's what happens. Now, I'm not saying that has anything to bear on the disease or the social climate of the politics of it either. It just has to do with the classism. If you're able to convince, and it's really ironic because you have it in places, for instance, like in France, where they just last year told Muslims they weren't allowed to go to the beach in a burqa and a hijab.
Crazy, I know.
Now they all have to wear masks. So I mean, there's definitely karma going on. And but at the end of the day, when you all have to wear a mask, you know, like, doesn't that say something about our society? Because Sharia is a Talmudic law at the end of the day. It wasn't what was originally in the Quran. The Quran wasn't all about, you know, spanking you. Like, that's a new order of the idea. Originally, it was supposed to be kind of an inclusive faith that would kind of bring together different kinds of ideas. So once they brought into it the Talmudic law, then it was like atonement. And atonement, it always comes back to, I forget if it was Jim who was earlier trying to search for the word. I don't know if you knew it, but I think the word was atonement, because consequences of actions matter. And so all of the time we're seeing, particularly in stories in, you know, the Bible, you have not, you know, this guy was a superhero and he did really great things. No, it's like this guy was a sinner and he killed his best friend for his wife, and there were 7 generations of bad consequences. And that's
where he chopped off a guy's ear and he denied Christ, and now he's
it's always
hung
about
upside
bad.
down and shit.
You need historical records of bad karma. I think it's important because people need to recognize that karma is a capitalist. It starts out wanting the candy bar back that you stole, but you ate the candy bar, so now it wants to tax you. And
so here's a question: can we be naively pessimistic? I mean, usually the fear is to be naively optimistic.
Be more cynical. Don't be pessimistic. Be more cynical. That's all it really takes. You can be optimistically cynical. I am. I'm very,
especially after watching Avatar, Star Wars, whatever. It always looks really fucking bad, and then, for reasons beyond human cognition, some punctuation event occurs.
You must learn to be like the grandfather, and you must have the tea of uncle. The uncle guy is pretty much.
Oh, he's my favorite. Yeah,
he's the guy. Yeah. He's the guy. He's got the Tao. It's like, give me more tea, and he's working.
But that's the white brotherhood of the lotus flower or whatever, right? Like they're the ones in the back, like where it's like, look, nothing's gonna work, and then they're like, we'll do this. That's what I'm saying, and I'm not saying it's Q. I'm not even sure what to believe in terms of the news cycles anymore, and that's why I think honestly going to internal spaces is probably more helpful than like scouring the internet necessarily. But I'm trying to be positive, but I'm wondering how much because of like post-Nixonian whatever, just there's an air. I mean, Arcade Fire taps on this in a lot of their albums. There's an air of cynicism and pessimism that we might be leaning too far into, to the degree where we're we're not seeing the hope that is potentially possible. Not that it's evident. I mean, that's the whole point of these punctuation things. It's like no one sees. You know what I mean? Like in movies, this kind of gets to the Alan Watts quote where Raphael's sampled before or whatever. He just played a song that sampled, which like the bad guys get fucking close to winning, and it doesn't mean they don't like scar the earth or have damage and shit, but it's like they don't win. And then the good guys almost lose it all, but they always don't.
That's
And-
and that's where I'm at. I mean, look, the Saturn cycle is really instructive here. We're in Saturn and Aquarius. Saturn is extremely powerful in Aquarius. Saturn can do Saturn things, but Saturn will be in Aries.
That should be a
and
bumper sticker. Saturn could do Saturn things.
Yeah, but Saturn's
like
coming to Aries. That's 1968. If we're on this timeline, that's Martin Luther King getting assassinated, but coming out as an anti-war, person, doing the people's anti-poverty movement, all the protests in 1968. They kind of give way to the next phase. MK Ultra, remember that's when
Right.
Saturn.
I would call them both the same thing. You know, the Martin Luther King movement's the MK Ultra movement at the same time, because they forced him to do a lot of things he probably wouldn't have done, and then they definitely killed Malcolm X because he was trying to actually become more inclusive.
Was Saturn and Aquarius when they killed, but I'm just saying, like, Saturn gets weaker. The authority gets weaker in the sky, and I was referring to those MK Ultra documents they found out accidentally. They claim that box. Like, there's going to be
Accidentally.
pushback and disclosures. The people will fight back. It's just not right now at this time in the cycle. And so my thing is that this next 3 years, 2023, is look, be prepared. It's skepticism, but I mean, I wake up every day happy as a fucking clam to be alive. I love to breathe air. I mean, just what a gift to be a soul in a human body. But I'm gonna have to make choices, right? Like if I fly to another country, I gotta call the embassy and research and cross my T's and dot my I's to protect myself. And so there's this balance. But no, these guys aren't going to win. I don't believe. I mean, it's a cycle. They're going to be down. They're going to be out. We're going to be back on top. The truth will prevail for a period, and then they're going to come around and have another bite at the apple. And I
So-
guess that's in the 2050.
What do you think about the whole, the books, the 1890s Ingersoll Lockwood books about Baron Trump's underground adventure and the last president? Have you read those or checked those out? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think synchronicity that could be purely synchronistic. I certainly think. I mean, it raises in my mind this whole question of the cycle of America, and I've got some other videos I've posted recently about. If you look at my Mars and Aries video, that talks about this cycle of the Mars retrogrades when Mars has retrograded in Aries fully with Saturn in Aquarius. It's only happened 2 times. It's happened a few times, but the last 2 were 1783. That's the Treaty of Paris. So that's when the American government gets established in North America. And the time before that is 87. That date may be wrong. And that was the first Thanksgiving when English colonists came here and then had it's one of the candidates for the first Thanksgiving. So we're in a huge cycle of several hundred years where on the North American continent, radical restructuring will take place in terms of the governance and the symbology. And so I think that, yeah, Trump could potentially be the last president in a certain way. I mean, I think that would fit, even if there is a president in name, the shift and change and alteration. And I think it has to do with technocracy, AI, like the WHO as a superstructure. They're clearly in charge. I mean, Gates is determining public policy all over the
We're
globe.
clearly being
instantaneously.
defunded right now. I mean, I'm all up for you, painting that picture, but even just the fact that we can recognize it that clearly, I mean, doesn't that obviously show that, we have a choice to make at this point, each and every one?
I just know, Raphael, I mean, they announced something. I heard from my friends in Austin. That was the policy the next day in Austin. And I'm in Batumi, Georgia, and it was the policy
For
the
sure,
next
but
day.
of
there-
course.
there was an
But the
ability
question
to
is just whether we go along with it or not. It's that simple. I mean, it starts with, civil disobedience, whatever. And just one very
Straight
simple
Taoism.
example. Yeah, I mean,
No,
I
for
go
sure.
deliberately to the metro without a mask, not because I'm so cool, but because with all, my best intention and heart and Hippocratic oath, and I'm not a doctor, I cannot wear a mask neither for myself nor for anyone else, because this is ultimately what's dangerous, on so many levels. And, then I got one guy, sometimes some guys come, they check, have a scarf or whatever, if I don't want to argue with them. Another time, just a passenger was asking, and I tried the best I could, to explain why. But But I
Plus,
guess
you look really silly doing a Masonic handshake wearing one of those masks, man. I don't know.
I'm with you, Ruffy. I just want to say I agree. I mean, we have to resist. I just think that there is this idea of changing, and the structure of governance, I think, has shifted in a really tangible and profound way. And I think this COVID event is going to mark another change in terms of what comes next, in terms of how governments are structured on a higher, on this larger scale, hierarchical scale. But in terms of the lower level daily choices, I'm with you, man. I mean, I want to resist too, strategically. And I mean, I was just going to say this earlier. We all have to decide, what's your line in the sand? Like, what for you is wearing the star? You mentioned that earlier.
yeah,
And
that's
for
a
me,
great example.
yeah, for me, it's like injectables. Like, I'm not going to have an injectable. And so
You don't do
anything
vaccines? You're anti-vaccine?
I don't want to
Oh
take
my.
anything injected into my body. Yeah. So if
So you've
that's
never
when I
had?
will-
I guess I'm asking, have you ever had? Have your parents ever forcibly vaccinated you?
So when I was a kid, they vaccinated me, but it was a different schedule. It was early 80s, so it was like 3 doses or something. And then I did have one back in my early 20s, in the aughts. I got a vaccine because I was going to travel to Thailand. I didn't.
right?
So I have had some. But I mean, this was before I was as aware as I am now, and I'm just, so I won't go back there. I'm not going.
What do you think about children vaccines? Do you think that it's causing autism, or that it's changing your brain, or it's making kids more, even nanobots controlling their mind, making them, like, how far do you go on how bad it is for you?
Well, the RNA DNA technology, I mean, a lot of people are saying it's actually not even a vaccine because of
Right,
what they're doing.
nanobots.
This is the latest technology, yeah. So there's the potential for nanobots, but they're altering your DNA with these shots, hoping that your DNA will then produce something that fights the virus.
And is more, and maybe you can take out sequences of people's willing to object to things. You find the sequence that's common in people that are civilly disobedient. Like, you just take the DNA sample of every prisoner and figure out all the crazy ones have this sequence in them, and you just delete that from people, and then it just makes everyone kind of more, go with the flow.
Yeah, more pliant. Absolutely. So I mean, my general answer to you there is I'm skeptical. I don't want to do that. I would have to really research and feel comfortable before I ever did anything like that. I don't trust the people making it, like big multinational pharmaceutical companies. Do they deserve our trust? I mean, if we just look at the record, I don't think so. So that's where I'm at with it. I just, that's my line in
Right.
the sand. But what's your line in the sand? It sounds like, Raphael, you don't want to wear a mask. Do you wear them ever in Vienna? Like to go to the store?
Yeah, well, luckily because of my synchromystic lifestyle, I could avoid ever having to go in the store and during that time. Oh, actually, sorry, I did. I went to the head shop and there I got a scarf, mainly because, I know the guys there. Of course, I don't want to get into trouble or anything or scare them or whatever. Those that I can talk with, I try to inform. It's really, really difficult because people have, in my view, very little base knowledge about health and different theories, and very high resistance to just even investigating, because that's always where I'm at. I'm never like, oh, you have to accept my belief system, but like, please look at the other side of the argument, and then let's see if you still have to be, as scared as you may have been. Some people, of course, I've spoken with, and they easily understood what it's about and deal with it accordingly. Technically now there is still it's not even a law, of course. That's the other thing. If you get into the legality of it, it's a huge joke. And at least in Austria, they have somewhat a semblance of a, lawful state or something, technically speaking, at least. And so here it's a so-called kind of like executive order thing. So the lowest level of, let's say, law that you could have. And even here it says within the so-called Verordnung, so the order, it says that if you have a valid reason or can make the argument that it somewhat influences you psychologically or biologically, then you do not have to wear the mask, and you cannot be fined for it. And it also says specifically you do not need a doctor's, agreement or paper for that. So it basically says in the order, if you can make a stand for yourself, then you're exempted. I guess what they still do, and that's what they once said properly to me when I was in the metro without wearing it. They were like to these order guys, and they were like, "Oh, you have a mask?" I was like, "No." And then the other one was like, "Okay, you have to get out." And I was like, okay, that's okay, because at least that would be the idea of this is private property and that's the, like local company order. And, then we're going to throw you out. I could be okay with that. They did not try or say that, they want to force me wearing a mask, because that's another kind of, not assault, but, one of these kind of things, technically speaking, right? Of course, no one knows about
He will
any of
not
these
be
laws
able-
and so on.
He will not be able to buy or sell anything unless he's wearing the mark of the beast.
Damn.
Yeah. So, anyhow, that's kind of the situation. I have a few friends that similarly do that. I also know of people in Germany and so on that deliberately also go into stores and so on and talk with the managers. They sometimes even agree. And even recently, according to official figure studies in supermarkets, apparently during all this crazy, pandemic periods and all the high risk individuals in the supermarkets, even in official figures, no supermarket employee got infected, which is,
Not yet.
kind
exactly.
of, yeah, anyhow,
Scam.
which is kind of,
Scamdemic.
yeah, anyhow, no, it is, of course, what I'm just saying,
There's no cases. I mean, it's so low, it's 0.003%.
No, the point is, me individually, anyhow, I see viruses as exosomes, as kind of like toxins flushing out of your body if for whatever environmental, psychological stressors you even have it. So for me, you can't transmit it anyhow. I just find it curious that they would release a report basically stating, even with official figures, that there was no transmission at all. And
I would go a little
Yeah.
further, because I'm a material scientist, right? Like, so I'm a nanotechnologist. I did nanoengineering. I did graphene research, and I was doing biosequencing. I did adenoviral research when I was working in Silicon Valley for what eventually became BioTwist, but was the human genome sequencing from UCSC, and there was like a number of different sequencing. I mean, we did banana slugs too. My friend's dog is the first dog that had their DNA sequenced. How many chromosomes does a dog have? I think it's like 72. It's pretty interesting. So anyway, or 78. So you've got these adenoviral sequencing programs. Yeah, that's right, exactly. I was getting back into that. But the adenoviral sequences can change your hair blue. They can remove the sequence and change the sequence. You can eventually, from scanning people's DNA, once you have predictive DNA, you can figure out scanning with a graphene tattoo, someone's DNA sequence every minute over and over again for a few days. And you figure out when a new sequence or an old sequence or promoter sequence opens up or closes again for what specific purpose it's being used for. So along the way, you start to see bacteriophages and what viruses look like, because they're these machines. They look like little spiders that go inside of you, and they can manipulate your ribonucleic acid explosions, because you have kind of a hexadecimal explosion system that has different colors, and then your system of acids can interpret that, and it predicts and it records it, and then it does it again in the future. So you can manipulate your sequences, but what you kind of get the idea of is nanobots, and that's kind of been my interpretation of them. Even if they're not synthesized by, on purpose, somehow these are being created, that you're getting these things that are kind of mechanical, and they're not like other life. And so this is a big thing for me. I'm like, well, adenovirals definitely cause certain good, like if you were to change your telomere extension, you'd be able to, or if you were to mutate yourself with younger DNA, you'd be able to be younger for a longer period of time. So there's clearly reasons why adenovirals and nanorobots can be useful. The problem is the data is not free, and looking at software, this is the same problem. That's the difference between Linux and Windows, right? Like if you can open up the code and you can see your own code and you own your own code, and no one's kind of capitalizing on exploiting your code. But that's the thing. You have companies that specifically have more knowledge about you than anybody else. And so they're going to exploit that information by selling you nanobots and antivirals that are patented to you. And this comes from the AIDS market, right? Because you have HIV, and then from HIV, you have to continually make a new drug. And the new drug's constantly coming out. And they're like, wow, this is how we control people. It worked really well in Africa. We took everything they had. Where's the most resources in the world? South America and Africa and Asia. Where's the most poverty and the most debt in any state in the world? Africa, South America, and Asia. It's constant. So now just do the same thing in the United States and in Europe, and have everyone on some sort of a subscription life plan. I think there's a movie with Justin Timberlake about this, where you have a certain amount of minutes until you start aging to death instantly, right? Like you can't
You just die of the common cold after you run out of minutes, like your cell phone plan. But up to that point, you don't age, you're beautiful, you don't get sick, you just pay them to stay healthy, you know? And that's kind of what scares me. And or I want to say one last thing for a second, because earlier when Victor left, I sent a quote from Mission Impossible, because I just saw Mission Impossible. I hadn't seen it since I was 6 years old in the
Read
theater.
that book. It's terrible.
Well, it's a 1960s TV series that they made into a movie, and then Anderson had brought up the 1960s during the MK Ultra period, or the pre-MK Ultra period, really, in the 1962s. Is the late 50s is MK Ultra, but there's also the Artichoke, and there's Monarch, and there's several other programs that come afterwards. So, anyway, what's his name? John Voight, the guy who's Angelina Jolie's father, but they never talk, and she's clearly messed up. He's the bad guy or something like that in Mission Impossible. And so the Scientologist, Tom Cruise, asks, why? Why did you do these terrible things? And he says, as a CIA agent who's betrayed his country against the president, he says, well, you think about it, Ethan, it was inevitable. No more Cold War, no more secrets to keep yourself from yourself, and no one to answer to, no one but yourself. Then you wake up one morning and find out the president is running the country without your permission. And the son of a bitch, how dare he? Then you realize it's over. You're an obsolete piece of hardware, not worth upgrading. You got a lousy marriage and 62 grand a year. I think that's a big reason why we're seeing this shift right now. And it's the same shift we saw in the 60s when George Bush helped assassinate JFK and became president. He's already president of the CIA, director, and became president of the United States over a period of time because of what he had to do. I think we're going through the same thing again, which is some sort of a authoritarian military coup. And
Saturn and Aquarius.
That's the thing. It's like, I don't disagree with you on all of those points. Those are exactly, from what I can tell, what's happening. But I'm not exactly sure that translates to Biden. However, if there was a guy who looked like a terrifying CIA agent who were to take over the country during tribunals through a military coup with the anti-fascists, maybe, and by the way, they're all wearing Doc Martens. Yes, Biden makes sense. So I hear you on that.
Well, and Biden's just a hollow thing. I mean, for me, it's more about the party that he's a part of. Like, Biden might even die. They might replace him because he's got dementia. It's more about what do we
Handlers.
call this group? Handlers, but they're in power globally. The Western
Every Democrat feels the same way. They're ready for Biden to die, and they'd still vote for him if he was dead. If they're,
I would vote
Guys,
Kanye before Biden, for the record.
Well, that's the thing. I hope we get into Kanye, because I think Kanye did an amazing thing. Because Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. Which is like, okay, slave master. But Kanye was like, that's when I had to decide to run for myself. And I think it means more than anyone really realizes to vote for yourself.
Straight up in Kanye, the birthday party, to go back to this idea of the birth of something new on the North American continent, he's using the birthday party moniker. I love when Kanye just said, listen, he actually mentioned Mark of the Beast, I think, maybe not, but he said the vaccines are Satan, or he was describing, he's a Christian, he converted. So he's using those metaphors and that worldview. And I think the Kanye moment, just the fact that he came out and said, well, he didn't say it in these words, but he's basically saying, I am not going to go along with the Gates-Fauci narrative. That's hugely symbolically powerful, in my opinion. I'm glad he did it, even though they dismissed him immediately as a bipolar nutbag who's off his meds. Again, off his meds, right? It's always back into reincorporating him into the medical industrial.
Well, remember when he went off on Trump, like, against his handlers. He went off saying, what you guys just don't know, and you should look into it deeper. So he was one of the first supporters. And then he was taken off Saturday Night Live and lithium overdosed and electroshocked like any good MK Ultra slave.
His dark place, or the dark, what did he say? I was in my sunken place, and he went down to his sunken place, and and then he came back and had this happy sheen on his face, and he didn't really say anything, and it's really creepy, man. Ugh.
And the Kardashians, I mean, they're weird anyway, right? Like, that's a family that's being kind of handled in the whole Bruce Jenner situation. It's an interesting time we are in, most definitely. I do hope that people continue to work on themselves individually and not get distracted by all the waves of the water, because we can walk on this water if we if we have our internal, compass kind of pointing to a north that we find suitable for ourselves. So
So you're
it's
getting married?
nuts. Oh yeah, I'm engaged.
Are you moving, or what's your wife lives in another country?
She's in
right?
England, yeah.
Or your fiance. So what is your
Fiance.
plan to relocate or to move?
I'm
on?
actually assessing that now because she's like, I'm all about RV life, and I'm like, all right, because I mean, we've talked, like, we had Judith, my friend, on last time, and she's talking about, like, I mean, before this whole COVID thing dropped, my goal, if you want to put it that way, was to run around to places like Vienna with Raphael and other places, and just meet up with people, get little co-op collectives going, and be like, whether it's Team Rabbit Hole particularly or not, I don't care, just get like-minded people going and like have cells everywhere, and just be like, I can kind of float around and I know where people are. I've seen this model work with the Christian Labrie thing, the Switzerland think tank hostel thing that I was a part of. They have many groups all over the world. So, but now COVID popped. I mean, it's funny because we're talking about all this mandatory stuff. It's like, if I want to, we haven't met clearly. I want to meet her and be with her. So if it came down to it, I'd be like, who is less inclined to get a vaccine if it really came down to that? I'd maybe have to pull cards. Like, right? Like, England's cool, but I don't think it's where I want to be, really, ultimately. But it has access to Europe, which is fine. America's cool, but I do think we're about to go through some, I mean, I'm not pessimistic, but I know we're going through some changes, and it might not be pretty. I have a nephew a cousin who's getting married, and he's going to have his wedding near Manassas or something, and that was a Civil War battle site. Where it was really early on in the Civil War, where there were people like sitting having picnics watching the battlefield. It was like crazy. I'm not saying we're going to go to extents like that, but it's like, history's funny. And yeah, my goal right now, I don't know, like, she's basically caretaking her nan, who's like in her 80s, and we've kind of said, I mean, we talk every day, like for a few hours, and it's the kind of situation where it's like, all right, I mean, if she doesn't pass in a year, we'll talk about like what to do. Maybe like that kind of thing. But right now, I can't travel there. She can't travel here.
There. You could travel there. You have to quarantine, but I think you can get to the UK.
Noted. Well, I'm not even financially like viable for that right now. So.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I mean, no, you don't have to apologize. So everything's happening.
I was like, I'm trying
time.
to like run your life for you. I'm just excited, man. I want to see that
I'm
love
stoked.
come together.
Yeah, dude. No kids. We're gonna have a lot of fun. It's gonna be missional. She's dope as fuck. I'm trying to get her on the podcast at some point, but yeah, she's cool as fuck, and I hope everybody can find the love that I found, because it's inspiring, and now I see why people get all fucking drugged out on love and stuff. It's crazy, but
how'd you find it? What was your secret?
Oh, not giving a fuck. Well, also going along. I mean, I don't want to go long onto this, but long story short,
okay.
I was down in Australia, right, hanging out with a friend who basically I was like. We ended up consciously coupling, is what we called it, where I was like, it felt like marriage, but like I didn't, well, I mean, I have nothing against her, but I think she was way more into me than I was into her. And I was kind of like, all right, I'm going to come back to Australia after I go to Europe. We'll see what this is, right, kind of thing. So in the medium, or, in the intermediate time, I went to LA, COVID dropped. I was there for a month with Judith. She was just on the last podcast. Shout out Judith. She's cool. Hung out with her. She's Team Rabbit Hole as fuck. And actually, I mean, her grandfather was like a Holocaust survivor, like all this kind of stuff. She's RH negative. So we talk about all sorts of stuff all the time. She's gang. She's friends with Raphael now. Very cool chick. You guys should add her on Facebook. She's cool. She listens to all these podcasts. Shout out, Judith. She knows what's up. So anyway,
I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna say that's why I did it. So okay, because I've been wanting. I have to keep tabs. We all your mom and I have to keep tabs on you, and your brother too.
Big brother, big little brother. So the point is, came back to Colorado, and I got quarantined. Right, I was in an RV for 2 weeks. My parents made me like do that shit. Like, I mean, that sucked. And during that time, or right after the time, I was watching the Leo King, who's an astrologer. He does spiritual dance music on full and new moons, and I was chilling, watching that shit, and making comments like my double Gemini ass always does, just saying snarky, funny things or using emojis or whatever. And this girl hit me up on Facebook, and she's like, "Oh, I've seen you in there." Apparently, I had friended her while I was in Australia and all this stuff. But Haley, my fiance, we started talking. I'm like, "Let me see your chart." She's got like first house Mars and Scorpio, and Uranus in the first house, and Venus in 10th house Leo with North Node there. Just mostly Virgo and Scorpio energy, really. And I was just like, "How serious are you?" It was kind of funny. But the point is, we started talking, but I was like still consciously coupled or whatever. Like, it wasn't on my radar as someone to hit up or whatever. I was kind of just like all over, not in that headspace. And then basically, long story short, we started having Kundalini activations when we talked, which I'm even actually feeling as we speak right now. So we're like connected to this weird energetic level. Went to some psychics she had gone to. They're like, oh, this is the connection. Made sense. Broke off the Australia thing. Started talking to Haley exclusively. After a month, we were like, we're dating, Facebook official, whatever the fuck that means. And then after another month, I was just like, you're the one I want to be with, so I'm done playing the game, so let's just get married. She's down. We don't want kids. We're both 11th house suns. Her Jupiter's exactly conjunct her sun in Virgo, 11th house. So I'm just stoked. Like, yeah, that's the best way I could put it. And it's funny because I've been Peter Pan syndrome my whole life and just kind of play, get high. Like recently, the last time I smoked weed, Raphael knows about this. I don't think you do, SJ. Maybe Andreas, you don't. Like, I've grew weed for years, smoked mad weed. You saw me smoking weed in fucking the Sync Book Summit, right? Yeah. Well, I'd never had really bad reactions, and basically, I smoked a joint of Blue Dream, and I'm not ruling out that there was.
You're not ruling out that your connection breaks down, yes, Jim?
I'm not ruling out it was chemicals, or it could have been a number of things, but basically, the universe kicked my ass with that joint, and I was just like, fuck, I think I'm like not over weed, but I can't enter that glove the same way, the Michael Jackson glove. It doesn't quite fit, right? So kind of gave up on that, and I just ate acid on Wednesday and had like not an awesome trip. And it's not that it was a bad trip, it just feels like the best way I can put it is I'm activating through Haley into my divine masculine, and that means I can't just play games anymore. As fun as I'll always be, I've got shit to do, and just playing video games and smoking weed or whatever isn't going to cut it. So that was a long-winded kind of way of answering that, but yeah, we're a thing, and stoked on that shit. She's actually in Stoke-on-Trent, so when I say stoked, I think Stoked-on-Trent. And yeah, I'm not sure what that's going to look like. She's just as happy being in if we were to be in England, she's like, let's move to Cornwall, like to the sea. I want to go back to Hawaii, but strange times, you know what I mean? So ideally everything kind of there's a solar flare and doesn't kill anybody and it kills all this COVID bullshit and we can travel again and I can go to do all the shit, but I'm not really I'm still trying to process the internal part that I'm talking about, right? If I can get balanced on my internal Jedi, like, it doesn't matter if Jabba the Hutt's out there or not, like, I can deal with it. But
Canada pays people to club baby seals every year. You could get I think it's like 150
I'm a
bucks.
vegan. I'm definitely not down.
You don't
with
have
that.
to eat them. What the heck?
I'm not gonna.
That's
okay,
weird.
so this gets into a funny thing. I
Turning
found a
around.
mouse the other day.
Why
in
do
a kitchen
vegans always obsessed about eating meat? You know what I mean?
I wouldn't harm it. Like, I don't.
You
want
to eat the
mouse?
spiders? Yeah, but you want to eat mice and humans. Deep down.
Nay, and that's the funny part.
That's where it was going.
I think there's just a lot of changes. So when we talk about the, this Rosicrucian Grand Awakening thing, I think I'm experiencing that on the front end. I'm not sure how to explain it. It was like, oh yeah, I'm constantly having Kundalini activations and reforming my life and doing good, not because the Bible tells me so or government or mom or, like that kind of shit. It's more like, oh shit, I'm maturing. And if I'm experiencing this internally, I imagine the world is going through, as within, so without. So it's like, yep, we're maturing and we're shifting gears and who knows where it'll go, but it's a wild ride, Mr. Toad's wild ride, and we can just kind of enjoy it to the best we can and hopefully not lose sight of that and not get so distracted on like the thrills and, lights and distractions and stuff. It's entertaining, ultimately, the whole life scenario, but bottom line, having found love now that I didn't think was possible because I'd kind of written it off. And I was not into twin flame stuff, just like I wasn't into, star seeds or any, astrology at one point. It's funny because I can't argue it phenomenologically, so I'm just like, I guess that's what this is. So long-winded answer.
Muddy Water song, same thing. You heard that one?
No.
It's kind of, I don't mean to turn it crass, but he's got this whole line about the same thing that makes the preacher lay the Bible down. And he's talking about basically women, and I just, anyhow, I don't even know why I threw that out there. Love is like the most beautiful thing, I think, and those experiences when you have that intimacy and closeness with another person. I've never been taken higher. Maybe some of my meditation experiences where I've been isolated and in silence for a long time, but even that's a different kind of connection. But when you have those two people together, it's like fuel, some of
Don't worry about that. That you gotta change your settings from text to talk, turn that off so you don't hear when people
Oh, that's
message.
what's going on. I feel so bad. I'll never
Don't
listen
feel
to that
bad.
message again.
You activated the artificial intelligence, Xirtus. It's over now.
Every time.
You know, I'm happy for you, Jim, and I
I'm
can
happy
feel
for
the
me
power of
too.
that. That's really awesome, man. And you know,
Frankly, I'm miserable for you. I can't. I feel. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you decided to fall in love with.
As
a
though you were
girl.
my drug dealer or something.
It's like, you used to have television shows from the 70s and reruns of, Wayne's World or whatever. Now you're going to have to spend all your time, focused on another person, and it's distracting. Have you ever heard of a funny comedian who's in a relationship? It doesn't work, So I'm sorry for the world. And, this is like that scene in The Lion King where, like, Timon and Pumbaa start to cry. But
well, I want to just actually, in a more serious note here, I really do think this is an important principle if we're talking about the hope and the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, but this transcends even that. I mean, the hope for how to mitigate this time we're going into. And think about it. I mean, and maybe this is going to change, but I mean, if you're in the act of lovemaking with your beloved, I mean, there's not a cell phone, I mean, that's still pretty tech-free, right? And so I think that that's a zone of safety with things like meditation too, where we can exclude the technocracy.
it really depends on if you date a cam girl, man. I mean, like, because if you're running one of those, like, chatterbait sites, like, you can use a phone in the middle, and then they'll give you, like, tokens and stuff just for doing things that they want you to do. So
Talking about that in-person kind of, that old school. Like,
Tantra
yeah.
is the new refugee camp, you're saying?
it's getting pretty weird. Joy Division is like a thing, like, and I noticed in Spain, especially, and like in the Midwest now, girls that are too young are wearing shorts that are too short, and then they put themselves on Instagram as young as possible, and eventually they realize that they're being treated as a commodity, but they're valuable because of the commodities they're the most valuable. So they think that that's a good thing, and then eventually they get older and then they're miserable because they haven't put anything else into it. And I think it's this patriarchal sexist thing. It's just consumerism is all it is. I mean, because they figured out that men can be exploited by exploiting women. I mean, it's just exploiting everybody, with extra steps. So
But that might change. I think that's the Great Awakening. I think we're waking up and stuff. And it doesn't mean we won't have hierarchical systems or value exchanges and stuff, but I think at some point we start creating the world we want to be in, being the change.
I see sex being freer. I do. I see the Japanese way it works, and I think that can come to the U.S. and to the West.
They got some
like,
shadow shit they got to work through, I feel.
But the thing is, but this is exactly the thing, right? That's the battery of reality, the sex drive. And that's what Leonard Cohen talks about. Love's the only engine of survival. That's what the tantrics knew. That's why it can be monetized so instantly, because that is the battery. And so that's what I'm saying here, is that's another way to go with this, is to really use that battery for these higher purposes. And Rick Clay talked about it. I mean, we go back to his work. He was saying how they were using porn to kind of disseminate and kind of extract that energy. But if we don't allow them to do that and retain that energy, particularly with a beloved, I mean, you can really change the world. Talk about manifesting, talk about any kind of magical
You're
act.
at least changing your own world, and then there's consequences that, like, as above, so below, as within, so without. So that's kind of where I'm at, where it's like, though the world, it's funny because in some sense I'm like, I laugh. It's like, oh, I guess I found love in the apocalypse, but it's like, this, if I didn't have her, and it's not to relegate her as some like coping mechanism, but it's like, if I didn't have this, I would be drinking or drugging heavily, much more paranoid, much more scattered and fractured as an individual. She's actually calling me into a higher plane of being, which it's all good for me. I mean, and that's kind of the thing, like you were saying. I mean, if we can remember that love within ourselves, because we all have Ida Pingala, we all have masculine and feminine within us. You can have tantra by yourself.
Absolutely.
I can see what's happening. They don't have a clue.
But what about the sex rituals with people like Parsons and others? I mean,
The Moonchild ritual, right? Do you think
those rituals? They changed reality, though.
You know that 9 months after that ritual, Hillary Clinton was born, right? Like, I've been sleeping with that thought under my pillow for the last 20 years.
I did not know that.
Yeah, pretty funny. And then
I always thought Bush was related to Crowley or something. I mean, I've heard this is where conspiracy theories on the internet can like just give you too many colors of crayons to play with. And it's like, all right, Jesus fuck, like.
Well, Crowley and Bush's mom do look alike, and that's you can keep it at a Mad Magazine level and still survive during the day night.
But the
Well,
theory there is that they
go ahead,
ripped
Essay.
into reality with the Babylon working. This was what, March 1946, that they opened something up and changed actually everything in our reality. So I just throw that out there that I don't want, we can change our lives, certainly, Jim, and that's a great part of it. But you might be able to change all of reality with that.
I'll do my part.
If you look into L. Ron Hubbard's connections to Parsons and Crowley, especially in the Burbank Golden Dawn, it gets really interesting when you start to look at Bridge and what started to happen with Sea Org and like the Hollywood manifestation of the reality that they want to imprint on people based on the Battlefield Earth novels, where humans are picking up on this new ideology from machines that train them. So they're trying to give us video games, and where Scientology has gone that no one seems to talk about is video games. Like, I've been trying to find a connection between Horizon Zero Dawn and Scientology, and I'll give me time because I'm still working on it, and it could just be a far out theory, but
It could be a rabbit hole, but that's what we're all about.
it could be a rabbit hole. But like at the end of the day, when you start looking at video game technology, you will find Scientology is tied into it. And L. Ron Hubbard found he might have said some pretty crazy stuff, but at the same time, he was involved in some of the weirdest military naval intelligence missions, like some of the ones that are so weird that they don't even talk about them to this day, and it makes him seem crazy for even being a part of. And the kinds of art that he was creating are the same things that the MK Ultra movement were working towards. Only he was telling people that if you looked into how it worked, you could use it to wake yourself up. And that's a huge part of what, I mean, granted, he died in Miscavige and everything, and Scientology is weird, and they spy on your life, and take your money or whatever they do. But I mean, they also probably help, if you go back far enough and you look at how Dianetics work and what they were trying to do after these moon rituals, he stepped away from these groups that considered themselves satanic and then went for just the word Socratic or scientific. And I think that's a big part of, we need to see that there is answers in kind of being aware of the binaural entrainment of music that we're listening to, of the MK Ultra propaganda. Even just the word propaganda, like people just shy away from it, but like really just starting to notice that everything is ideology, everything is selling something, even if it's not selling Coca-Cola, it's selling an idea, and that's probably more scary. So
even at a biological level, your prefrontal cortex is always advertising something for you.
I saw the word bio-Leninism the other day. I really liked it. I feel like that's happening too.
It's funny, Andreas, because I know you're not. I don't know. I can't say that with certainty and illusion, but I'm always thinking you're like some like Leninist, like covert bring America down from the inside type character.
Oh my god. Well, I get a lot of weird hate and fan mail. I just
some people think
he must be a
quadruple agent,
kind of like
quadruple agent Andreas.
I get a lot of accusations. That's really funny because it's like, at the end of the day, like either I'm for it or I'm against it, but it's like I'm really just trying to bring relevance to it because I think people need to discuss it, because I really would like to hear, like I said, I would make my own decision based on the best argument I heard. I wouldn't just go with the most populist opinion, but I really do think we need more people discussing topics. I'm a fan of dialogue, and I think that often people have been trained to
hush up, PC.
Well, there's two kinds. There's also, okay, so, I've seen both sides. There's like, because I used to run propaganda, I would call it, for public relations for, like newspapers that were designed to be read by the left and newspapers designed to be read by the right. And conservatives and liberals in the United States are not that different. You just change the article title slightly. And you've seen this where you have the same photo, the same article, but the title is slightly different. It says like, this guy, like Cheney, really held their balls tight, or it says like, oh, Cheney let their balls go loose because he was nice to them. Like, they change it one way or the other because the audience needs to hear the same news. But they know that, and so this has been my experience with the United States, like in general. Like we have one, we talk about the Russians having one TV with one station. We have one station, really, with three maybe, but they're all designed to manipulate each other in a democracy because we vote against each other. So there's no reason that anyone wants to work with each other, and then we constantly divide each other up into smaller and smaller fragments. Like we're not just humans. We're Americans and Europeans, or there's a conservative or a liberal, or a black or a white, or he likes Rage Against the Machine and I like Smashing Pumpkins. Like who cares? Like they set it up in this way that people have to fight each other instead of the actual idea.
Well, that's what waking up is all about, though. Remembering that we're all one. I mean, that's the fucking bottom line.
I think you got to be really careful about it too, because those, David Plate, one of the geniuses of our time, has said that we got to be very, and also I think it's quoting from the Zohar, which so God is great and all. This idea that we don't want to lift the veil too quickly on people because of what's happened already. People have accepted things they were shocked by before the deal. They're like, well, okay, yeah, the car does mean I have to sell my soul, but it has leather interior, so like people are constantly getting, what you want is right up at the very end of it. When they lift the veil, they're horrified at what they see, and they do not want to marry the zombie corpse that's on the other side of the veil. All right. And if we've slowly lifted the veil, people would be like, well, I'm really excited to get married. And they can gradually sustain that. Like,
necrosis isn't that bad.
Yeah, seriously, people do that.
So you're into Plate. Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with Plate about his work in the Zohar and on this exact issue, and it's really.
You guys have to petition him to get on here. I'm always hitting him up. I'm getting his lady friend on here for fuck's sake, even. Babs Farney, she was like on Thrasher. I didn't mean to cut you up. I'm like, fucking David Plate. That is
an amazing manipulation. I hope
no, I
all
gave her
together
a chart
can do
reading. Oh, I thought you meant about Babs. I was like, she was a skater artist type. She's cool as fuck, and I'm like, come on the podcast. But she happens to she's helping, or I don't even want to get into their psychodrama. But the point is, they're a thing. I think it's a level, and
you mean
tell him to come on.
It's psyche drama, but yeah, I have a couple episodes with David. If you go on my channel on Xirtus, you should check out the last one he did. Was going over his ABBA synchronizations for a couple hours, and I'm about to release actually in the next week a video with David that we recorded at the same time, but we just didn't put.
This is where it gets hard though. He's going so hard in the paint for me that it's so specific.
No,
it's
you need 8 hours of one
digestibility
for 8 hours. Yeah, and it's just David, and and you need to have notes from every moment. And to be honest, it's worth it because but that's the thing.
We're
it's
gonna
heavy.
do it. I'm all for it. We're gonna set it up.
I mean, I've been trying. This is a fish I can't get. I can get goddamn Rick Strassman.
I'll talk to David. We'll see if we can go together. Maybe he'll come. It'd be great.
Do it.
But the idea. Just I want to throw this because it's the Zohar predicts 9/11 to the date. That's his big thing. He translated one of his big things. He translated with his rabbi, and you start asking him, well, what does this mean? What are the ramifications of that? And it's a whole complex conversation about knowing when the ritual might be enacted or when the change is going to come, and who can know, who should know. Is there culpability? I mean, it's a real big can of worms that opens up.
I'm all about it, and I do want to get him on. And I would like to know if there's any future ramifications, because I feel like one of the downsides, in my opinion, some of the sync book rabbit holes would be people just geek out on Kubrick or 9/11, and it's that's fascinating, but we're here now. Now
well,
what?
I think they need to spend a bit more time giving context. See, this is again with you've seen my group Advanced Philosopher memes. It has the kind of joke in it with the word advanced that it's beyond the first thing where everyone needs to already understand the same things, and it's well, that's kind of it's ironic. But what he's saying often is that Bernays has, and a number of people after Bernays have used public relations and propaganda using Gestalt, right? The Feynman Schuler designs, and in a Schumann resonance even has a certain kind of use in television media where the laugh tracks are set to a certain frequency so that it causes the same responses in people everywhere, and they trained people with these responses. So looking, you know, I did again, we did recently this video about the Boogaloo and all this footage from Breakin' 2, the Electric Boogaloo, which was a breakdancing movie. And we cut a scene in from the discussion from room 237 about the Tang boxes and the talcum, you know, the talcum like baking soda, which has an Indian on it, and they're saying these Indians here, and the way it's arranged, that Kubrick was clearly trying to make this point, and then he has Tang boxes, and that connects to 2001: A Space Odyssey. He's faking the moon landing for the government, and he's setting up that he's going to do this in The Shining, which is, you know, it's a weird idea and all, but there is something to back that, you know, if there was a war and there was a problem and the technology didn't work correctly, like the movie Capricorn 1 shows with O.J. Simpson in it, they have a whole film about this idea. What if they had to have a backup plan? If the moon landing didn't work, you seriously would need a backup plan, because you don't want
it's bad PR to fail.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot, not just bad PR. You could destroy it. I mean, you could destroy PR. No press is bad press. If they decided that people died and they never wanted to hear about this again, then they wouldn't do it the same way. So you had to set this up, that they had this, and also there's a legal precedent if they land there first. So there's reason to believe, even if everything was supposed to go down the way it was supposed to go down, that they would have also had to hire Kubrick in the background. So putting up, anyway, all of these ideas. In Breakin' 2, the Electric Boogaloo, there's a scene where a kid's sweeping a street, very much like in the Jedi movie. The kid grabs the broom with his magical power, and Jedi 7 or 8, like the newest one. This, you know, all the powers have been extinguished in the galaxy, but some orphan is able to magically grab a broom. Well, so then in the store that the kid's working, before he goes breakdancing and magically moving the broom and floating it in the street with strings, they show 3 boxes on the shelf of Kellogg's Special K cornflakes, which is a white box with a bright red K, size of the whole box, about a foot, you know, a third of a meter, you know. And so you've got these 3 cereal boxes that say
K for Kubrick.
K. Well, you have 3 of them right next to each other, so it's K, and it's right behind. I mean, I think of them as both, ironically, because A, it's exactly what Kubrick did. But B, what did Kubrick do? He was talking about the Holocaust. He was talking about the Argentinian Nazis, because 237 is the highway in Bariloche where the mansion is that they think Hitler went to if he actually left to South America. And
what a dream we are in, y'all. I just have to say, there's so many layers to this program.
Right.
Keep going, though.
I wanted to say here this quickly to, you know, the Hierophant principle that we started this call out on. I really wanted to return here, because this is what I was thinking about exactly at the beginning of the call, when our other friend was on telling us, and when you guys were talking earlier, Xirtus, you were talking about forgot exactly what, but it's this intermediary of reality, right? It's the social institution and structure that then mediates the divine, what's above, into the human form. And I think about that as like the media, as being very similar to maybe what the Catholic Church was in, you know, the previous millennia, where they determined what reality was. And I've been thinking a lot recently about Galileo and heliocentrism as kind of a release of something, as a piece of propaganda, as a social engineering operation. And I was, you know, considering that, but the idea would be that the church then kind of creates and forms how we think about the reality in the world through that kind of hierophantic or priestly class. And I wanted to get your thoughts on just heliocentrism. I mean, you're bringing up the moon landing. It's a whole can of worms, I know, but where are you at with that as being a part of, you know, the control structure? You know, the idea that we're sold on a certain you know, version of what this even is physically. Any of you guys?
I don't have any horse in that race, but I mean, this gets into flat earth stuff pretty quick, right? And I'm sure XD Wilner would be on.
In a way, I mean, not to go explicitly there, but
Did I
like
smash
this,
my microphone or does sound coming through now?
No, you're good.
now it's coming through.
Okay,
now it's
I
coming
got
through.
really excited when you said that, and I literally knocked my microphone over. So I had to plug it back in. So here's the deal. So I used to work for NASA. So I did internships, and I was in.
I just want to point
Wow.
out CNN,
Insider,
Al Gore,
yes.
NASA.
Yeah, no, I mean, like
Can't
if there was like the worst Anderson Cooper, like Austin
His
Powers.
NWO plant.
That's
Andreas Xirtus.
I'm the Austin Powers of Anderson Cooper. I don't care. Like, you can say that. But like, here's my thing. I was an intern at NASA. I didn't do like incredible space rocketry or anything like that. But my grandfather was
Houston?
my grandfather did Lockheed, so he did rockets and he worked on the Columbia shuttle and he made ceramics.
That's more proof.
And so
Were you
I've
in
spent,
Houston, Xirtus? Were you in Houston?
I've spent a good amount of time in a lot of places. I worked for the Peruvian government. I worked
Texas,
for the
so
Bariloche Research Lab.
The fuck?
I've been in San Antonio. I spent time because there's a NASA research thing in San Antonio that does satellite and
That's a Nazi base, by the way. They brought them all down to Lackland in San Antonio right after. That's where Werner von Braun and all of them came.
interesting. Also, that my grandmother referred to Werner von Braun as Max once at this event when I asked her about it. As I was getting older, like 15, 16, I started to find out about these things. And I was
First
like,
name basis.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, like
The
that's
firmament
weird.
on this gravesite.
And I
Great
thought
son.
that I got that my aunt went to school on the East Coast just because, but now I realize it had to do with the fact that my grandfather was working on the East Coast because working in Alabama and in South Carolina, I think. Maybe it was Georgia or South Carolina, actually. I have to ask, I forget what it is. But they, this was all because they were building another rocket launching thing in one of those states. So I spent my life kind of groomed to work for NASA or for Lockheed, really, Skunk Works. And so I went through, NASA is usually a first step because you do an internship from Stanford into NASA, or you from Foothill into Stanford into NASA, do the Discovery program. There's a lot of ways in. And I would do stoichiometric indexing, which got me into material science because I was like, wow, with photolithography, we can make graphene and we can do all these things. Having said all that, your question was about
Heliocentrism.
heliocentricity. The more you look into it, the more you see there's a case for the other side, that we have been making adjustments for this side. I would say that my main thought at this point, like if I could just skip ahead, because I don't necessarily want to say like too much on the side of flat earth, because that's someone else's debate. I think Victor, again, he would give you his side. He's very adamant about it. But for me,
Just
I
take
think
quickly. Is he in the
flat
flat
earth.
Earth camp?
He's definitely in the flat earth camp. A lot of people are, because if you start to, if you live in somewhere like Denmark where there's no mountains, but for
It's more
me,
plausible.
when I first noticed it, it was like I went to South America and I flew and I was like, holy crap. Like, this is way, like, just looking out the window from dawn till dusk, I realized the way the world was shaped was different. And also, you think about the UN map and you're like, at first I was just thinking, well, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the north projection, the polar projection, so that I can understand it better. And eventually I started to realize what I was doing. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? I've totally started seeing the world this way. So I would say on one level, it's possible that we're being taught to see the world in both ways. Because if we're being possessed, if there's some sort of Elvira's hypothesis, iridium wave, if we have a portal like in the Ninja Turtles from the Philadelphia Project open and Krang comes through and everything's changed from Dimension X, it might be that we perceive things differently so that it's easier for our bodies to be taken over by these new spirits, and that's kind of, the weirdest possible idea. But in terms of consciousness, I don't think it's out of the question that we're like Pac-Man, and something else that sees fourth dimension like a line or a dimension of space could, if we gave it control, could maneuver our bodies. That's, I think, the scariest proposition.
I mean, that's the scary part of it. However, again, I would like to reinforce this. We are all already supremely connected to the one and our own higher self. So all of these things can only happen if we deliberately give permission and are ignorant to our inherent.
But many people do. People watch
powers.
the Disney and Nickelodeon and MTV.
No one cares about many people. Again, positive energy potentiates, negative energy, if at all, may somewhat add itself up, but even that not very effectively. So this is, the numbers game here is kind of different. And in terms of flat Earth, all I can say is and I would encourage this for any debate, is really, look into the research community, pick out the really, smart ones, and there are smart ones in any community, and look at their arguments, and also kind of look at to what degree individuals are willing to communicate and debate. I think that's really, really crucial, because it seems oftentimes then out of some kind of superiority complex, one side will not talk with the other because they just deem them insane, instead of going on a live talk and, going through the things one by one and discussing them through.
This is a huge part, is hypnotic reactionaries. Okay, so
Exactly.
This is something I noticed earlier. I felt like Victor and Anderson,
I
both
noticed
of you,
this.
were talking about this subject that had both been charged in social media through mind control, so that your side and his side existed, which is ridiculous.
I'm trying to dismantle the Q narrative. That's all. And I was trying to play devil's advocate.
And he's trying to
he swallowed that pill hard.
He swallowed that pill hard.
I went in to engage that pill that had been swallowed, and I see it as propaganda. But I did engage.
That's the right thing to do. Don't get me wrong. And but at the same time, it's the right thing for him to do, to try to reinforce his narrative so he can realize it. So both of you guys are doing the correct thing. You're trying to dismantle and reinforce until one of them holds true. The sad thing is he should be trying to help you dismantle it if he really believes in it, and you should be trying to help him reinforce it if you really don't believe in it, because at the end of the day, you want to see the other side of it. And the problem is neither one can do that if everyone's fighting against each other, which is what hypnotic reactionaries are.
No, but it was part of the nature of the conversation. Just to say the nature of the conversation. I mean, I'm really capable and would love to have a calm, it would take a few hours.
Oh yeah, I don't know about Victor though. I don't know if he can do that.
And that's what I was saying in the chat. I wanted to find common ground. Where do the two positions agree with?
Well, clearly when we started, it changed. But when somebody puts you in an element, like Victor puts it in that perspective, then that's the way it starts to. You have to respond to that kind of energy. So
it was hot.
Yeah, it becomes hot. Yeah, he's going really fast, and so hypnotic reactionary. He's like, there's no way. I can't accept the idea. It's absurd. Frankly, I think the idea of bugs.
How dare you?
Bugs that think are offensive. It's the Starship Troopers thing. And then you can't imagine the other. He can't imagine the other side. Then there's no way to grow, right? So this is what I think happens: is we have hypnotic reactionaries, and they're constantly taught to think that something's completely absurd, or now it's dangerous, right? You have COVID, you could die.
Oh yeah, it's dangerous. That's what it is. It's a mind virus. Dark crystal once again.
But it used to be, just for a long time, you couldn't do that, because if you MK Ultra'd people into thinking that they had to run through windows all the time, people would be running through bulletproof glass, and it was messed up. So now you just have, for a long time, you have just people laughing hysterically like they're in some sort of psychiatric hospital. That's the response that they've trained people to just completely shut down and start laughing. Or if it gets further than that, they get angry. And, on both sides, you've implanted this idea of hypnotic reactionarism.
I think we should have an episode on flat Earth with y'all. Actually.
Oh yeah, and just to also give another answer to SJ in terms of the perspective. So I'm not, in either camp. To me, because of the, divine synchronicity of everything, I also don't really care. I can well imagine all kinds of things, including hyperdimensional portals that lead to an inner Earth that's actually in another dimension. And, of course, what the flat debate often is, there is no aliens because they're interdimensionals. Of course, that's also equally true. There's many points to that. But what really gets me, and which is super obvious to me, is very simple. Antarctica is a military, closed up zone. Definitely. That's enough for me to show me that, okay, something is completely off limits.
That's the most valuable thing about
aside from
they're going to prove that Antarctica exists as a military base, a Hyperborean place, and they need to show that it exists.
Yeah, and all I'm saying is then, at least in my mind, it's not too hard to imagine, looking at the UN flag, if you just kind of, map it a bit differently, that this could really could well be the, small mining camp on a much larger, who knows what, landmass, maybe, planet, the way we kind of want to look at it. Who knows? Toroid.
You can bet that NASA's showing you pieced together pictures and that they're not as accurate as things you're getting from flat earthers. That's the funny thing. Whether or not one side or the other side's right,
it's worth looking at the data that they're accumulating, because a lot of the flat earther data is actually based on real photographic or radio telescopic metrics. That's interesting. And when you start to see that things are not the way they've been presented, and you have to go back and wonder, where did we get these measurements? And you're like, well, actually this metric is Newtonian, and that's from the 1600s, and he just said 80 million miles, or a million light years. Like, what does that mean? It's all relative. So I think it's essential to talk to the flat earthers, because really what they are their outwards observers. They're observing from themselves outward, and they're not using the same systems that we're all taking for granted. So we're often going to find some truth in that, even if it's not exactly what they think the truth is.
Well, maybe that's a good place to wrap it up, because now we're starting to get... Okay, SJ, what you were saying?
One other thing I wanted to raise here to wrap it up here, because it's something that Raphael shared with me recently. I don't know exactly when, maybe in the last month or two, since our last talk. And it really kind of opened me up, and I thought it was a wonderful image. There's a spectrum he sent me of different ideas. And so like you have the traditional right, left, and even communism and socialism. Like these are in like the middle of the spectrum, but there's a whole wider spectrum of political thought. And one of them is closer towards gnosis. So on the one hand, you have gnosis, release from the mortal coil renders politics useless. But the one right before that is called Arianism. Total freedom. Management of affairs is unnecessary as universally well aligned to chakras. Promote benevolent behavior from all.
You can keep talking over that. We hear it, but whatever. The voice to talk thing.
Yeah, that's the link just for you guys so you can see it.
We'll have to switch you off that setting after this conversation so it never happens again. And then Andreas won't be living in fear of the OK Computer voice.
So SJ,
Computer voice.
SJ, you want to continue?
Yeah, sorry, Q, not Q, flat earth, not flat earth, this idea of spiritual alignment as a political act. And this is kind of why I like this, because it broke out the traditional political structures into these spiritual structures. And I don't have in front of me the other side. Is it something like Satanism or something, the opposite of gnosis?
It's on the very opposite. It's Illuminism, which says elites and underclass now form two distinct species. All world's resources controlled by the elite. All activities subject to central policy.
Sounds like Agamben. Sounds like the Agamben essay, doesn't it? Wow, that's scary.
Dark Crystal, Star Wars, all of it.
It says,
And
see Brave New World in 1984.
Yeah, it's like that's what I'm kind of getting at the end of the day. I can't, like, it's fun and entertaining to watch all these discourses, and I think it's helpful ultimately for the Akash and our own individual paths. But like, if we united we stand, divided we fall kind of shit, it's like you have to be united internally with your chakras at the very least, all this kind of stuff, your karma. And when you do that, the world that you witness is the one you need to be witnessing, so you can just enjoy the ride. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy necessarily, and Raphael will say that's a belief, but like, we'd sign up for, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're a dismembered person, that's very much harder to go through the reality than if you're an assembled Megazord.
Yeah, and I have to think again about just love and the physical act of physical love. Maybe that's all my Aries in my chart and all my Libra, but I go back to that as kind of the transcendent spiritual. Anyhow, yeah, thanks for sharing that, by the way, Raphael. I really appreciate that. That kind of blew my mind, and I have that now. I've been sharing it with other people because it changes the ground that we formerly might have thought we were standing on in terms of the political possibility.
The Gospel of Raphael.
I just grabbed it too. I really like it a lot. It's pretty good. The Aeons versus the Archons.
And that's the
one.
choice.
Let me find that other one. Because you sent me two. Let me see. I like this one the best, but there was another one that I thought was really good.
Well, maybe while he finds that, do we have any kind of parting sentiments?
Now the AI is going to be talking again. So, of course, these two documents are going to be linked in the description as well, so people can check it out. Really cool. We may even want to do a show just on that chart and have like a group discussion on the different aspects historically and currently, and different ideas, different philosophies, and where they could range on that particular spectrum. Because to me, as Jim says, it really comes down to a choice. Like, do you wish yourself and others to be self-responsible? Do you wish to apply the golden rule? Do you wish to allow yourself and others as much freedom of expression as possible? Or do you choose fear over love and wish for some kind of command and control system where you give up all responsibility? At least to me, the clear distinctions can be made. And again, at least to me, it is messy in a sense, but there are certain basic ideas, I guess, which we also all share, where clear discrimination can be made. Then all it takes is a choice and the application of that choice. And as of course, I see each and every one as supremely self-empowered, truly nothing more than that particular choice. Love or fear is all that is required.
I would have
So, yeah.
put Jainism somewhere along the side to Gnosis there, because I think
I was wondering where the line for Janes is, because it's like, if you don't crush bugs, like, but you have like microbes that you kill by accident, or like, you know, that I'm just wondering.
Life is hard. Life is really hard to be a Jain. The thing is, what it really comes down to is acceptance of the idea that you're destroying millions of Horton Hears a Who universes at a time just by sneezing or stepping or anything. So you try to limit that impact as much as possible. But Jains are allowed to eat toenails and fruit from trees, because that ends up proliferating the trees and etc. But the main thing for me was, you have a Swazi on one side, you should have a Swazi on the other side that's backwards, to show that they're really part of the same equilibrium, and that you can't
continuum.
You can't have one without the other. And really, it comes down to submission is a choice, but it's also the final order of things is to get into an organized system that's like the Siphonospore jellyfish or the military. I mean, like, there's a place where everyone sleeps together and everyone dreams together and everyone runs with each other, and it's called the Marines. But they can have trampolines there, and they can have long hair, and we can change it a little bit, but that's, at the end of the day, it's on both sides of it.
So I can just say I'm all for hierarchy, however properly understood as the divine order of self-responsibility and perfect synchronicity. So it's all depending on perspective.
I'm for specialization. So I look at the, Gods Must Be Crazy documentary, right? Or it's a movie, but a guy gets hit with a bottle of Coca-Cola from a plane, and it's in the middle of the African bush, and this guy eats, they live in a tribe that's never heard of good or evil. They know snakes have a pointy end, but they're not good or evil. They're just, there's benefits to things that are good, but they don't think of it that way. And eventually they have to, realize that everyone's job at the end of the day has to get done. Like, she needs to get the water, he needs to pound out the leather, she needs to he needs to catch the animal for them to eat. And if any one of them thought one of their jobs was more important than the other, then none of them would have the full experience that comes at the end of the day. So specialization is huge. Mushrooms specialize, they have different kinds of cells still, but they're not hierarchical in the same way that our political body is. We have all of our political body in one place, and then maybe actually 3 or 4 places. You have gut, brain stem as well, and you have a spinal system. But this idea that there's just one hierarchy, that never works. It turns out that the human body, actually, the benefit it has is being able to pretend to be separate, right? We're able to look like we don't know everything. So,
for apotheosis, resurrection, kind of divine reunification, that's kind of my goal. And that's why I like these charts, because they've got Gnosticism as a central and important component. And I like this notion that we have the divine spark. It's kind of central to my worldview, actually, the divine spark within that we can quicken and work with on a daily basis, both for personal, out of personal necessity, and then out of kind of how to deal with the collective struggle. So anyhow, it's interesting, and I think that would be a really cool topic, just to go deep on these charts. That sounds like a really fun conversation and necessary to have.
And we'll make sure we don't all interrupt each other next time, because that was a shit show at the first half. It was like a fucking okay
Ooh,
crowd.
brother! It felt like the Wrestling Foundation was like Hulk Hogan and
WrestleMania.
yeah, like Savage, like Randy Savage, like, ooh, you took my world, you took my terror. It was like pretty funny. I don't know.
Sorry to have to go there, guys. I just couldn't.
No.
I mean, Q came up.
It's great.
I waited.
Part
it
of the
came
show.
up more. Yeah.
Also,
But I gotta go there.
It's so useful though, because it shows the hypnotic reaction rate. There are booby traps set up so that people can't agree with each other, and it's amazing. They've set it up so well that it's like landmines in it's thought crimes, and like, so everyone has their side of it, and it's like we're divided against each other over the weirdest things, because at the end of the day, I kind of know Victor. He would agree with you on like 99% of everything, other than that particular single lexicon that Noam Chomsky would describe as ideology.
And that's part of why I was trying to take this stance of like, let's dismantle the thought entities, or what did you call them? Thought forms or thought viruses or whatever. I was trying to dismantle one, as opposed to, and I just feel like Q, and maybe I'm now falling back into one, but my sense is that it is one of those things by design, and it's one of those minds that's been percolated deliberately into the social media.
That's like it's an invaluable opinion. You need it. Like if someone didn't say that, we'd be in that TV show, the Man in High Castle, where everyone's like either full on fascist,
Excellent
Nazis.
book.
Yeah, the book's great. The TV show is not bad, I would say.
I liked it. Loved it.
I think it's
Finish
okay.
that.
But I would say that humanity, needs to have this kind of discussion. The way I go about it, though, like, I had a really messed up, and by that I mean awesome, teacher in junior high that did sophist debate. And the way it would work is you'd be told about a subject. The next day or whatever, they'd select the two people to study it, and then the next day you flip a coin for which side you have to defend and which side you have to arbitrate. And that was so messed up, because you couldn't choose your own side. You had to like be like a lawyer for this. Imagine if you had to defend Q, like, what would you do? And it would drive you kind of crazy. So that's a big part of sophism, is that I think that Victor really should spend more time putting himself in the mind of somebody who was trying to dismantle Q, because if he was, it would be very valuable for him. But I think he thinks that at the same time it's not worth it. And at the same time for you, obviously, like, if you had more access to the justice.gov files, or if you had more like faith, I guess, in the executive orders on human trafficking. I mean, like, for me, one of the things that tipped me off, I was never a big political person really, but I saw, I like Vermin Supreme, but I saw the, Bitcoin market go up and crash during the election. And from my understanding, that was hugely because of human trafficking and the value that was being put on cryptocurrency for persons and children that were being sold. And while I was in Argentina and Chile and Peru and across the borders around the Amazon, I was a witness in a case that involved the governments of Brazil and Peru selling women and children from Venezuela, which I was able to extract from my Pi. I used a Raspberry Pi that was connected, and I was researching this data. So I found some pretty interesting things that correlated to this, and eventually it led me into this community. And of course, a lot of them are pro-Trump, and it's et cetera. But it's like, at the end of the day, I don't think you need to be pro-Trump to just be aware that QAnon is really happening. And it started out that everyone said, oh, it's not real, it's just some internet conspiracy. I don't think we can do that anymore. I think we have to admit at least that there's some sort of a conspiracy, that Trump is doing something, and there's using this propaganda machine. And from there, how far we take it, is up to us. But like, you don't have to buy into it, just to acknowledge it. And I think that's,
and I was
we need to start addressing it. Yeah.
What's the purpose of it? And I think that's where we had a different.
Absolutely. No, that was where I agreed with you. I was like, but here's Victor. Listen to this guy.
I'm a trained debater, by the way, and I mean, part of that is you have a resolution that's presented, so a statement, and
be resolved that,
and then you've given a side, and you debate both sides for a long period of the same resolution. And so the thing about debates, and this is where I think we lost the first part of this call, was that those debates, you have a timer and no one can interrupt, and you can present your case and you can present evidence, and then the other side gets a chance to respond. And that's a little harder to do with that kind of quick to the draw call. That's why I
Well,
kind
Raphael
of
could always mute people, I guess.
I can make myself louder and mute everyone else, you know. So it's also
Centralization
possible, technically,
of
if it's
power.
necessary, you know.
Raphael, you can be goalie, I guess. Yeah. No, I mean,
That's why I just dropped the bomb right away, Xirtus. I just like, listen, I'm going to play devil's advocate, accuse a psyop, Mossad, because I needed that approach for
and that was
context.
it became that. I totally agree. That's totally But I also appreciate that afterwards we were able to like continue on the conversation, because if it was just going to be like 2 hours of like, you know,
Well, we're allied in your axis. Yeah, infighting is retarded.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it would have been kind of a game. Yeah, exactly.
So, any parting thoughts? I think we should get y'all on again. I'll schedule with y'all, do it again, and we'll have more refereeing.
Mr. Anderson, James, like that. This has been a pleasure. I really appreciate what you brought. That was really a lot of interesting information.
Yeah, likewise, Xirtus, and thanks a lot for everything. I mean, my parting thoughts. I really want to meditate on the symbol of the Hierophant. And because like we said at the beginning, Jim, I was like, let's just pull some cards and get into the stream that way. And I feel like that kind of has been hovering over this whole call, but this intermediary, what institutions are mediating your reality and my reality, and just meditating on that? Are they useful? How are you choosing to consent to that and to acquiesce? And where can you maybe extract your consent and do some of your own mediation without necessarily the need for that institution, or enjoy the institution, but know that you can pick and choose those mediators in your life. You have that power.
Well said. Yeah, gentlemen, always a pleasure to have you on. It's always fun to go down different rabbit holes, learn, find the others.
Please do take the time to check out Team Rabbit Hole on Facebook and Advanced Philosophy Memes, APM, on Facebook, because we've got good sized group there. And go, please, if you have time, to look at some of my funny videos on things. I think, James, you should say your link as well. Mine's Xirtus. That's a YouTube at Xirtus. And I have some interesting things on the Boogaloo, QAnon, and Tartary Nova, and a lot of other stuff. Really, I only mention that stuff because it doesn't freak me out.
NASA moon tapes. SJ, go ahead.
It's SJ, and everybody, you can find me. Twitter is my main hub for social media. I have an astrology account there. I always tweet about astrology all the time. My YouTube channel just got started 28 days ago, so I'm not going to give out a URL yet because my custom URL I have to wait 30 days to get that. But sjanderson144.com, that's my website. You can book an astrology reading with me there. That's what I do in my, that's what my passion and love is. And that's what I do. So find me there. I love to read. And yeah, it's been great to be with you guys. This is by the way, the Saturn Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius. This is the great promise that's positive, being able to connect with people all over the world instantaneously. This is the kind of, and the implications for human freedom, that brings is kind of the great promise. So.
Well, thank you, guys. Nothing left to add. Team Rabbit Hole live in action. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. Thank you all for listening. Yeah, that's what's up. Catch y'all in the now. Enjoy yourselves.
Follow your dreams.
Where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
Radio